had to eat between streams. So. Oh, all right. Always down for a impromptu discussion. And I had to eat really quick between the last live stream and this one. So, thank you. Just swallowing my giblets. Swallowing my gravy filled with giblets. Not sure what a giblet is, but that's what I asked Jamie to make. And being a good wife, she did it. She made me roast giblets. All right, so now Sovereign Brah, if people misunderstand, I'm not debating Sovereign Brah. So he raised the question of, hey, what is the issue between, I'm trying to see how he phrased it, Orthodox and Roman Catholics of 1054. Why did the Eastern Orthodox Church reject Rome's claim to papal supremacy at the Schism of 1054? What was the reasoning of Constantinople? I am struggling to find a succinct answer to this. And then he says, maybe this isn't the right question. Maybe a better question is, when did the Roman Catholic Church officially reject the Catholic doctrine of papal supremacy? And then he says that we should bring in, some other people. He's listed. He's popped on here, so I'll add him as a speaker, and then we'll open it up here in a little bit. If you want to phrase your question, I don't want to put words in your mouth. If you want to say anything. If not, you don't have to.
Hey, what's up, Jay? How are you, man?
Good, man. Good, dude. How are you?
I'm chilling. Thanks for having me and being willing to host this discussion.
Sure. Thanks for bringing me into the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to give a little bit of context on why I would ask this question before I explain the question and where I was going with it, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so for anybody listening who's been following me for a while and anybody who doesn't know, so I'm technically a non-denominational Protestant, have been for 9 years now. And I have a number of Orthodox friends and Catholic friends. And over the years, as I've been speaking about the faith with them, when you speak to someone who's deep into Orthodoxy or Catholicism, you realize how much more there is to the faith than you find in Protestantism, with the sacraments and all of the teachings of both churches. Protestantism kind of leaves a lot on the table, so to speak. And so I've been curious about both, and I've been kind of moving towards both, yearning for the opportunity to get deeper into the faith. And I've spoken with both Catholics and Orthodox, and the thing about both Catholicism and Orthodoxy is that each of them individually makes specific claims to truth. And one of the reasons why I find Catholicism very interesting is because it's very Western in its thought, right? Like the Catholics have articulated every single imaginable aspect of the faith. And as someone who enjoys reason and logic and having things articulated, and as someone who has many questions about the faith, that aspect of things is appealing to me. Now, with that said, there's the question of the papacy, and this is something that I've been wrestling with, because the papacy and the supremacy of the Pope, there's a lot to make sense out of there as someone who's new to kind of both Orthodoxy and Catholicism. And Catholics are absolutely militant about protecting the Pope, protecting his authority. I mean, it's, their religion essentially revolves around that. Aside from obviously, the teachings of the Bible and so on and so forth, like the papacy is really what seems to differentiate it in large part from Orthodoxy, as far as I can tell.
No, absolutely.
In addition to, there's Orthodoxy is much more mystical than Roman Catholicism is, so on and so forth. But the papacy is this central thing. And when I was looking at the history of the Great Schism, there's so much to pull apart there. But it seems like, basically, to summarize it, it seems like the Rome was like, hey, we have supreme authority. and the East was like, no, you don't. Like, we're not going to respect your supreme authority. This is a gross oversimplification, but it kind of seems like that's at the root. And when I read, so you shared Dictatus Papae on my thread, and I read through that, and I'm like pretty blown away by this document. Speaking frankly, it just seems like the East kind of disrespected the claimed authority of Rome, and then Rome in response was like, hey, you know what, we're going to dictate that we have like complete and total authority over like all of Christendom, and it's going to be concentrated in the hands of the Pope, and anybody who disagrees with that is excommunicated. It kind of seems like it was like a massive power grab, and I'm trying to make sense out of all of this. Like, I don't know if the Roman Catholic, claim is correct. It could be false. I don't know. I'm just trying to make sense out of all of it,
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first thing I would say is that when it comes to the schism, 1054, there's not really one thing. There's sort of an evolving and sort of piling up series of things that occur that lead to the schism at that time. There was already disagreement over the addition of the Filioque to the Creed. In the time of Saint Photius in the 800s, there was already discussion of this, and Photius in his letters complains that Frankish missionaries had been sent under Charlemagne into territories that were Orthodox, Bulgarian areas, and so forth, and that they were foisting this creed with the addition of the Filioque. So already there was dispute. This is why there's two different councils between the East and the West, which are called the Eastern. It's the Eastern Eighth Council and the Western Eighth Council. Pope Leo III explicitly forbade altering the creed. So even as late as that period, it was not acceptable to change the creed. But it's
when was that?
Let me see what Leo III's dates were.
That may have been Constantinople 879J. Is that what you're thinking of?
Pope Leo III is he is Pope from 795 to 816. Yeah, so it's even earlier. But I mean, he's famous for that position. Then I think the Pope after him is the one that says, no, actually, it is okay to have the addition to the creed. So basically, I mean, it's not just about the creed. It's also about other claims that are being made, which, as you correctly pointed out, by the time of Dictatus Papae, which is the Gregorian period, this is really where we start to see an alteration towards explicit temporal power. So if I was to lay out one of the strongest arguments against this position, it's not really about whether the Pope is first among equals or first in the church, or if he signed a lot of the councils first. The Pope never called an ecumenical council. Okay, they're always called by the emperors, first of all. So that for us is a sign that they're not operating on the mindset of Vatican I. Vatican I places this is the later council in the 1800s that places essentially all the authority in the church ultimately on the office of the Roman See. So he's declared to be, at Vatican I, infallible. He's not able to teach error, and by extension, I would argue the assumption of Vatican I is that you can't have a pope that's a heretic. So, because it would mean that the Roman See can err and the Roman See can defect. So you have the indefectibility of the Roman See, which is taught again later on. But we already have, in the first 1,000 years, particularly the case of Honorius, the Sixth Ecumenical Council, he's condemned as a heretic. So I'm just making the point here that the Church in the first 1,000 years, especially at the Sixth Ecumenical Council, certainly didn't have the Vatican I mindset because they saw fit to excommunicate a pope for actually teaching theological error. It has nothing to do with his private opinions, as Roman Catholics say, because when the council excommunicates and they don't adjudicate between private opinions and public documents, they simply say that he taught error in one of the letters that he wrote to someone else, and he taught the monothelite error. So this idea that the Vatican I definition, which is what is the burden of proof for the Roman Catholic, you either have to say that this idea of Vatican I evolved over time, this is the idea of doctrinal development, or you argue, as Satis Cognitum of Leo XIII says, it was always the teaching of the Church from the earliest days, recognized by all. So it can't be both of those. Those are mutually exclusive positions. So most Roman Catholic apologists and defenders end up having to kind of choose between these two options. And I think either one they choose is kind of devastating, because if it's a development doctrine, then we're kind of at the position of like Vatican II developments, which go in the direction of theological liberalism, even perennialism or universalism. If you look at Lumen Gentium 16 or Nostra Aetate, which are Vatican II documents, or the statement that the Jews are elder brothers in the faith, and that a lot of the statements that the Vatican has made about the Jews post Vatican II. I mean, these are all really retroactive or revisionist positions based on the idea of evolution of doctrine. So in other words, there's nothing about evolution of doctrine that necessitates evolving, quote unquote, into a conservative doctrine. It can in fact evolve into something liberal. I would argue that the idea of doctrinal development itself is actually a kind of a liberal idea. If you look at, even though Cardinal Newman and people who proposed this idea might have been somewhat conservative, there's no reason why this necessarily would be a conservative development. But if you go with the argument of, well, it was always the teaching of the church that the Roman See was universal in its supremacy, its authority. It was always indefectible. It was always inerrant. And you notice in one of the propositions of Dictatus Papae is that the Roman See can be judged by none. I think the Roman See has never erred and never will err unto the end of the world. These are ideas of indefectibility. So, but this is really impossible if an ecumenical council, particularly the Sixth Ecumenical Council, is condemning Pope Honorius for heresy. Three later councils reaffirm that excommunication of Honorius for heresy. It's not stated to be a private opinion. It's actually explicitly said to be heresy. So what we have in Dictatus Papae under this Gregorian reform period is really the Pope becoming a geopolitical power. And
that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah. And now a Roman Catholic might say, well, maybe Dictatus Papae isn't like totally dogmatic, or it wasn't really like totally authoritative. This can be something that we can throw away. The problem is that multiple Roman Catholic scholars nowadays admit that this period of the Gregorian reforms of the 11th century, this would be like Congar, Francis Dvornik, again, recognized Roman Catholic historians and scholars. This is the revolution period. It's called the Papal Revolution because the church shifts away from synodal ecumenical council approach to a monarchical papal approach, meaning now that, for example, the Pope will decide every bishop in the world. Okay, prior to this, the Pope did not determine who would be every bishop in the world. This is a total ecclesial renovation. And we know that this is the direction that the church went, because even if you were to throw out Dictatus Papae, you need look no further than Unum Sanctum of Boniface VIII, which actually says not only that you have to believe in the Roman See and be in commune with it to be saved, you actually have to believe in the doctrine of the temporal supremacy of the Roman bishop to be saved. Now, where in the first 1,000 years of the church was there this idea that to be saved, you had to submit to the Pope as a geopolitical world power? Nowhere. Why was it there? It was backed up via forgeries. The donation of Constantine most famously backed up this idea of the necessity of salvation via the temporal supremacy of the Pope. Now, Vatican II, the Pope took off his triple crown. The triple crown that he used to wear signified his authority in every realm, including heaven and earth. So the taking off of the papal tiara, the triple crown, signified that at Vatican II they would no longer accept or try to promote this doctrine of temporal geopolitical supremacy. So what was necessary for salvation at the time of Boniface VIII in 1302 nowadays isn't even necessary for salvation. In fact, post-Vatican II, they actually say that countries should de-Catholicize. There should be a de-Christianization of the state post-Vatican II. This is in some of the Vatican II documents. So that's a clear change in doctrine in terms of even what's necessary for salvation. Now, there's many other things that can be said, but I think that it's not just a question of the filioque. It's actually centering on this shift away from the notion of a church that's synodal, that's conciliar, into the direction of the papal autocracy. And last thing I'll say is that the recent Vatican, this is papally approved, by the way, for you Roman Catholics who are going to hand wave this, the Alexandria document of June 2023. This is the council that discusses issues relating to the Eastern churches and to the Orthodox. This is a part 2 to the Chieti document from some years earlier. The Chieti document ends by saying that they admit that the Roman See did not have universal jurisdiction and primacy in the first 1,000 years. That's the most important element of that document. It's at the very bottom.
Sorry, Jay, can you repeat that one more time?
Sure, it's the Chieti document. Let me pull it up. It's Chieti. If you look at the very last proposition, I'll scroll down to the bottom of it. It says, Proposition 19 here, over the centuries, many appeals were made to the Bishop of Rome from the East in disciplinary matters. Attempts were made at the Council or the Synod of Sardica. This is what's called the Canons of Sardica. Sometimes Roman Catholics try to argue that this teaches papal supremacy. Of course, it doesn't. If you read the actual canons, it's about it's about reestablishing trials. It's not appealing to the Roman bishop as the final word. This admits that. It says that it establishes rules for such a procedure. Sardica was received at the Council of Trullo. Trullo is a council that's accepted by the Orthodox and is accepted at the Seventh Ecumenical Council. Roman Catholics don't accept Trullo. The Canons of Sardica determined that a bishop who had been condemned could appeal to Rome, and that later, if he deemed appropriate, he might order a retrial. Okay, so it's not a de facto Rome says the final word. It's just a retrial. It was to be conducted by bishops of the province and the neighboring, the bishop's own see. Appeals regarding disciplinary matters were also made to Constantinople. So you could appeal not just to Rome, but also to Constantinople. So Sardica is not a defense of Vatican I stuff like they want. Then it says, such appeals to major sees were always treated in a synodal way. Appeals to the Bishop of Rome expressed the communion of the church, but the Bishop of Rome did not exercise canonical authority over the churches of the East. So here you have a papally approved admission, Chieti document 2016, and then they reconvened this Eastern papally approved synod meeting in 2023 last year, and it's called the Alexandria document. And what's amazing about this is that the Alexandria document goes even further to admit about 90% of the criticisms that Orthodox make of the Roman Catholic Church. And I'll end with this part. That does not mean that we're moving towards reunion. What this means is that the papacy, out of geopolitical and ecumenist motivations, is admitting that many of the criticisms of the Orthodox are actually correct. It even admits that the false decretals, the false donation of Constantine, the very things I mentioned are mentioned within the third paragraph as basically forgeries that were used to prop up things like the temporal supremacy of the Pope. The Roman See can be judged by none. That's actually based on a forgery as well. That famous statement that's still, I think, in canon law in the Roman Catholic Church. Anyway, so all of these things are really admitted in the Alexandria document, and what it means is that Vatican I is not true. And if Vatican I is not true in the extent of its explicit definitions of what the universal, ancient, historic jurisdiction of the Roman See is, its indefectibility, its infallibility, its supreme teaching office, and so forth, then Roman Catholicism is false, because it's a system that's based on a consistent dogmatic statement over the centuries. So you can't have ecumenical councils, but whether it's Vatican II if you're a trad, or whether it's Vatican I if you're a Novus Ordo Catholic, you gotta submit to all of these. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And if one dogmatic pronouncement contradicts, the whole system falls apart.
So that document that you just read from, am I correct in understanding that it was conceding that the Pope did not have supremacy for a certain number of the first centuries of the first 1,000 years or whatever it was?
Yeah, the first document, the Chieti document, is admitting that there was not universal supremacy of the Roman bishop in the first millennium. And then the second document is admitting that all of this stuff was really propped up around things like forgeries, the false decretals, the donation of Constantine. There's actually many more of these, Samakian forgeries, Galatian decretals, on and on. There's a whole bunch of these that were used for centuries to prop up, which now the Vatican admits, as do most scholars, that these are forgeries. So they're not legitimate documents. They're not the only things that were used, but they were used very heavily for many centuries to prop this up.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
If I could add, just of note on that topic specifically, the donation of Constantine was what was referenced by Pope Leo IX at the schism. That's literally the document in his papal bull when he excommunicates Constantinople. That's the document he references to justify it. And this is a document that is now considered a forgery. So it's not just a general attestation to these forgeries. Like, it's literally the document they used to justify the schism.
So, as I look at this from a bird's eye view, obviously the claim from both Roman Catholics and Eastern Orthodox is that, everyone says we are the one true church. We're the early church, right? We trace our roots back to the early church. And obviously both churches can, to some degree, make that claim. The question is whether or not, the question is which one can fully make the claim. And my personal leaning, the more and more I learn, is towards Orthodox being able to make that claim. But I obviously haven't heard the full picture from both sides yet. I mean, there's a ton to the history here.
Yeah.
And I want to hear. I'm sorry?
Oh, I just wanted to add something on that after you're finished. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the question of the papacy. Again, it really seems like its primacy came into effect during the 11th century and then after the 11th century. And it sounds like prior to that, Jay, from what you're describing of the history of the church, major decisions within the church were not determined by a pope, but were instead determined by synodal councils. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, the church's approach is conciliar. That's what the Vatican document is admitting. And it's basically saying, when it comes to the Vatican I idea, the papacy, it's something that evolved pretty clearly. So they're going with the Cardinal Newman route of the evolution or the development of doctrine versus the idea of satis cognitum, which is Leo XIII's encyclical, that it was always there as the ecclesiological structure and model of the church to be Vatican I papal. So, so yeah, I mean,
that's what Catholics today say. They say Peter was the first pope,
right?
And there was, papal succession all the way down from Peter to, the current Pope Francis.
Well, let me add a little nuance here, because as Orthodox, we agree we believe in the same doctrine of apostolic succession. Where we differ is not so much whether Peter has a lineage or a succession at Rome. We think he does. But in the Orthodox mindset, if you read Irenaeus, for example, in book 4, I think, of Against Heresies, he explains that the greatness of Rome is precisely because of the presence of Peter and Paul. So it's nothing specific to Peter, it's Peter and Paul. That's the ancient tradition, even in Rome to this day. If you go to the Lateran Basilica, which is the ancient Basilica of the Roman Church when it was Orthodox, you'll see up at the very front the two sort of equal statues of Peter and Paul. They're situated very equal, so they're facing each other at the very front of the church. And I think that speaks to the ancient tradition of Rome being the see of Peter and Paul. Even all the way up into Pope St. Gregory the Great, when you read his letters, he says that the Petrine see is Rome, Antioch, and Alexandria. So even at that time, there was the idea that Peter established his succession not just at Rome, but also at Antioch. And in the Orthodox Church, that's where we get the idea of Antiochian Orthodox. They derive their descent also from Peter. And so when Rome is presented with that, well, they say, well, but Peter was martyred in Rome, you see. So there's a special significance to Rome, which then somehow grants this special charism of infallibility to the descent in Rome.
Or indefectibility.
Yeah, and it's not just infallibility; it's also indefectibility. All of these other, attenuating doctrines as per Vatican I. But again, church history doesn't bear that out. And if you want an easier, quicker route, I would say the easiest way to see what the mindset of the church was in the first 1,000 years, to see if it was papal or if it was conciliar, is to look at what's called the canons of the councils. So each ecumenical council establishes what are called canons, which are basically just church law. And these ecumenical canons, at every single ecumenical council, do not align with the Vatican I mindset of the Pope being the supreme, universal, infallible, final word on everything doctrinal. That's why every council has canons that conflict with papal supremacy and assume conciliarism. And for example, we have canons that talk about the only thing that's needed for a bishop is to have 2 bishops and a metropolitan to ordain a bishop. There's no mention of the Roman See being necessary for the ordination of bishops throughout the world. We have statements about the limitations of jurisdiction. And there's no explications in these canons that the Roman See is exempted from the limitations of jurisdictions. These are consistent canonical statements and teachings. And so then what Rome has to do is say, well, yeah, but the Pope basically just can throw out all the canons that he wants. He's above those. But the councils don't treat the Roman See as if they're not subject to the canons. The attitude of every council is that the Roman See, just like every other see, is subject to the canons. And that's why it's so great to have the Vatican now admitting this nowadays. And that's why the trads have to just say, well, I don't care what the Vatican says anymore. I'm a trad cat, and I hand wave whatever Francis and the Vatican, post-Vatican II structure does, and says, unless I like it and decide that it's trad.
So was Dictatus Papae canonized with Unum Sanctum, basically? I mean, did that become...
Well, I'm just saying that, so the point is that at that time, there's no clear, it's not like there was a clear explanation that Dictatus Papae was included in the Pope's register the year of 1075. So he certainly expected it to be accepted, that is Pope Gregory VII, right?
When it says it was included in the Pope's register, what does that mean exactly?
That just means that he saw it as official, his official teaching and what he expected. Now, whether he had in his mind that everybody would do that is, you could perhaps debate that. But it doesn't really matter about whether that, like, each of these propositions is, quote, dogmatic, because the main point is that what this is really about is about his temporal supremacy. And you can go to, Unum Sanctum, which explicitly does make the temporal supremacy necessary for salvation. So, in other words, Unum Sanctum really is the dogmatic statement that shows that the attitude of Dictatus Papae is expected to be accepted, even if every single proposition isn't necessarily part of Unum Sanctum. Does that make sense?
It's expected to be accepted for your salvation?
What's expected to be accepted for salvation is that you have to believe not just in the supremacy of the Roman bishop and you have to be in communion with him, you also have to believe in the temporal power of the Pope.
As dictated in Dictatus Papae.
I believe so. Now, but even if you think that it's not,
and it takes on a dogmatic character.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
that's what
I'm saying I think Dictatus Papae.
I'm looking at this, and okay, so for those that are listening, Jay, is there any possibility you could pin your tweet where you linked Dictatus Papae on my thread to the Jumbotron? Because I think this is important for people to read, because when I read through this, my mind was pretty blown.
Right. Well, but the reason I'm talking about Unum Sanctum is that I already know all the Roman Catholic responses. I used to be Roman Catholic for many years, so they're just going to say, well, we don't have to accept that because it's not, quote, ex cathedra. Now, this is a whole other problem of epistemology, which is that there's no clear...
Wait. Before you go on that, I want to hear that, but before you go on that, we have a lot of listeners that are like hearing us talk about this, and this is like high in the sky church history for like the lay people, and they need to know what this document says. I want them to see it. Like, I'm reading it right now. Number 9 on Dictatus Papae says, the Pope alone, that of the Pope alone, all princes shall kiss the feet. Number 10 says that his name alone shall be spoken in the churches. This is the only name in the world. It is permitted to the Pope to depose emperors. Number 19 says he, the Pope, may be judged by no one. Number 22 says that the Roman Church has never erred, nor will it err to all eternity, the scripture bearing witness. 22 obviously,
Okay.
This
So
is central to Catholic teaching, but 9 through 12, this is it's like, I guess I'm asking, if you don't, is it Catholic teaching that if you don't believe in these things, according to Unum Sanctum, if you don't believe in these things, you can't attain salvation? Is that basically
So
teaching?
here's what I'm saying. Yes, basically. So Unum Sanctum is affirming the basic principle that you have to believe in the temporal supremacy of the Pope to be saved. So it doesn't really matter about every single one of the propositions, because a Roman Catholic's going to say, well, these aren't ex cathedra, I don't have to follow these. That's the first thing they're going to say. And I can say, well, I can grant you that because it doesn't really matter, because you do have to accept Unum Sanctum as dogma. And it basically makes the point that you must believe in the temporal supremacy of the Roman bishop to be saved. And if the temporal supremacy of the Roman bishop to be saved is dogma, then all the things in Unum Sanctum follow. I mean, in Dictatus Papae follow. Then he can say, his word is law in terms of the temporal sphere. He can depose and call armies. Because you understand, after this, the Pope starts having a standing army, right?
Yeah, which, honestly, I don't have much of a problem with. That's pretty dope when you've got a
Well,
bunch
no,
of,
but it's not. Well, hold on, though. Here's the thing, though.
Except for when they sacked Constantinople.
Well, here's the thing, though. The canons of the earlier councils, like Chalcedon, for example, forbid any cleric from holding civil office. There's a clear teaching of the distinction between temporal power and spiritual power. In Orthodoxy, which is the teaching of the first 7 councils, this is the meaning of the double-headed eagle, the Byzantine eagle, right? It's 2 heads. It's not 1 head, it's 2 heads. One symbolizing the temporal power and one symbolizing the spiritual power. Now, you can't blend the two, because the canons have already taught, and it had already been accepted universally, that a cleric cannot be a civil ruler and he can't be a warrior. So it's actually a violation of church law to mix these 2 realms. Now let me say also on this point, let me find the tweet, and I'll put the Dictatus Papae. Now, we had a lot of people who want to jump on. Is that okay with you? Do you?
Yeah, I have 2 other questions for you.
Sure, yeah, go ahead. Now, there's a young man who says, I'm scared and running, which I've already told you, bro. We're gonna go to you, dude. Just chill.
Yeah,
we're gonna go to you.
The first question, so the Great Schism, as far as I understand, the disagreement was over unleavened bread and the filioque. Is that correct?
No, those are just, again, partial elements. The schism ends up being over the office of the Roman See, whether he has universal jurisdiction, whether he can unilaterally act outside of his jurisdiction to excommunicate, right, or to control the liturgy elsewhere or whatever. Right. In other words, to change the creed. Does he have that ability? Okay. So that's part of it. There's also theological divergences that are occurring between a Latin view of how we understand the Trinity and grace versus the Orthodox conception of how we understand the Trinity and grace. That was already in the dispute going on in terms of Augustinian theology versus the theology of the Cappadocians and theosis. Okay, so that's part of it. As well as the issue of the filioque, whether there's a double procession or whether it's a single procession from the Father through the Son. All of these things are contributing. And then there's other issues that you mentioned as well, such as the bread issue, even things like communing of infants, which the Orthodox Church has maintained the ancient practice that infants receive communion. The Roman Church changed that. The Roman Church banned married priests, which it used to have. The Council of Trullo teaches that you should have married priests. So there's a whole litany of things that end up being the source of the schism.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you for that. And the second question. So, as far as I understand it, Nostra Aetate was created in order to heal relations between the Catholics and the Jews. And I saw a document a few years ago out of the Catholic Church basically saying that the Catholic Church would not authorize officially any mission outreach to Jews to convert them to Christianity. which is like crazy to me because the Bible says that if Jews don't believe, then they will be cut off from the tree. And, they already are broken off because they've rejected the Messiah. But if they don't believe, they're damned. And when I look at the Catholic Church basically officially stating, no, we will not authorize official outreach to Jews to convert them to Christianity, I look at that and I'm just like, what's going on here? Like, it seems like some sort of, I don't know, I just get like weird vibes. Like, it seems like a subversion from like within the church potentially. I don't know. What do you make of that?
I know that's absolutely correct. In fact, the Vatican has been putting out documents, not just Lumen Gentium and Nostra Aetate, but they've been continuing to put out documents. There was a particularly scandalous one that was approved some years back about the church's relationship to the Jews. Even so-called trad Pope Benedict, in his book, Many Religions, One Covenant, says that, Jews have a valid reading of the Old Testament, and, there's not a necessity to necessarily convert our elder brothers, is, I think, something John Paul II said. So, no, this is a very notorious error, and that's precisely because Vatican II is not just about Jews. Vatican II also says that Muslims and Christians worship the same God. It says that Hindus also call upon God in love and adoration. And this is essentially, perennialism. It's the idea that all the religions ultimately are sort of masks of God. And this is the basis for Francis creating the multi-faith center. Francis approved this as based on the document that he signed with the Grand Imam that we can have a Muslim, Jewish, Christian, multi-faith center in Abu Dhabi. Okay, well, that's just apostasy because we don't worship the same God. If you don't believe in the triad, then you're not worshiping the God of Abraham, because it's basic Christology, basic Orthodox theology that Jesus is who's there with Abraham. It's not a Unitarian generic Muslim God or a Jewish God. It's Father, Son, and Spirit. It's Yahweh, his angel, and his spirit. That's the Old Testament revelation to Moses.
Remember the quote from Pascal, the God of Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac, not the God of the philosophers.
Exactly. He's actually correct.
Okay, dope. Yeah, thanks for answering that.
Hey,
do you think that they just got it wrong? One last thing. Do you think that they just got it wrong, Jay, or do you think that it was like intentionally subversive? Were there other elements that were, interested in pushing this stuff? Like,
there were. There's actually a long history of, there's geopolitical powers that play into ecumenism. There's even Roman Catholic authors that have written books. David Wimhoff has a great book. He's a Catholic lawyer called John Courtney Murray, Time Life Magazine, The American Proposition, which is about the influence of America, its deep state, on Vatican II and the doctrinal warfare program headed up by C.D. Jackson. It's a famous Roman Catholic book. He's been interviewed on countless Roman Catholic podcasts, so this is not some Orthodox conspiracy person. This is there is a geopolitical power element too to ecumenism. But I think that really it's also an outworking of a long train of theological mistakes. So the idea of absolute divine simplicity, which is the Augustinian presupposition for how we go about understanding the Trinity. That really leads to a different model of the Trinity that's adopted in the Latin West in the Middle Ages. And it's not the model of the triad that's very normative and universal in the East, which is the Cappadocian teaching at the Second Ecumenical Council. So basically, if you read Photius, we would say that St. Photius, the mystagogy of the Holy Spirit, the divergence is really about the triad. And that's what conditions the ecclesiological papal divergence. And if I mentioned that Sherrard book, Church Papacy Schism, he actually makes the argument that the papal thing is actually an outworking of the theological mistakes.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Have you produced content on Operation Gladio?
Oh yeah. I've got probably 5, 6, 7 podcasts on that.
Legit. Yeah, I figured you probably did. Sweet. Yeah, thanks for answering my questions, Father. Sorry for interrupting you a few times.
Hey, no problem. I wanted to let you get your questions, and they were excellent questions. And I'm actually just really impressed at the right kind of questions you're asking at the level that you are. So keep up the great work. I mean, you're miles ahead of where I was.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, honestly, I mean, when I speak to people that are educated on all of this, I feel extremely retarded. So I appreciate the vote of encouragement.
Dude, if I could on that topic, dude, it's not as complicated as people make it out to be. Like even like the schism itself, like just from a common sense standpoint, like 4 of the 5 patriarchs were on the Eastern Orthodox side, and it was only the one patriarch, the Pope, that was on the Western side.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that.
The church, like in the first millennium, the church was built on the 5 patriarchs. One of which was Rome, and even in the Roman Catholic Ecumenical Council 869, they admit that the heads, plural, of the church are the 5 patriarchs, and 4 of those 5 simultaneously were on the side of the Eastern Orthodox at the schism. Rome was alone. So it's not like an insignificant detail, and it's kind of like a common sense detail that a lot of people kind of overlook.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly the point that I wanted to make. So one thing that both Jay and I have noticed, and it's just a kind of common problem that any of us could be infected with, is that we take our own paradigm and then you read that in to everything else. And so with the Roman Catholics, they have a very centralized, all the power centralized in one office. They don't have this kind of concept of decentralization, what we call in Orthodoxy, autocephaly, and synodality. And this kind of caused some problems for them kind of thinking through these issues. And let's go to what Luigi was actually saying about the split in 1054. They tend to conceive of it as, and frame the issue as, look, it's this one church against this other church. Like 2 people, and then it confuses people inquiring into it. Well, which one's right? They're both saying they're right. But as Luigi correctly pointed out, this is because they fail to understand the kind of notion of decentralization and autocephaly. Here you have 5 patriarchal sees, and when they operate jurisdictionally, they're independent. So it means a lot that, well, wait, it's not one person against one person or one institution against another institution, and who's right. You have 4 of those people who are all, jurisdictions and sees who are independent, right? They're not under one another. They're autonomous entities.
Let me add to real quick that, and a lot of Roman Catholics don't even know this. They think that Orthodoxy just made up autocephalous churches. It's actually the Council of Ephesus that is the first statement in 431 of autocephaly granted to the Church of Cyprus. So Ephesus ratifies the notion of Cyprus being autocephalous. So it's actually out of the ecumenical councils and not something that Orthodoxy invented on their own. And Pentarchy as well comes out of the canonical structure of the ecumenical councils, not something Orthodoxy invented.
Yeah, so really you have a 4 against 1. If I could give an analogy, imagine you had like 5 friends growing up, and they're telling a story about, one of the friends tells a story about what happened growing up, and the other friend says, well, wait a minute, that's not true, that didn't happen. Oh yeah, no, that's the way it happened. So it's a he said, she said sort of thing. And then what you get is, oh wait, you get the other 3 friends come in and say, no, that's not how it happened. In fact, you're relying on a document that's a forgery to perpetuate your lie. That's more kind of an analogy of what's going on. It's that you've got 4 friends that are saying that's not how the story went at all. That's not correct. In fact, you're using a forged false document to even argue that. I think that's a good analogy and a good way to kind of think about it. All of which the 4 friends haven't been talking and been separated, so they haven't conspired against. It's just they were accounted their history together, and they found that you have 4 against 1. I think that would be a strong case that you would be, at the very least, suspicious of the one friend, i.e. Rome, and what their claims are.
Let me add Evan. He's really eager to argue the Roman Catholic Sedevacantist position.
Is the timeshare presentation over?
Yeah, it's really funny. What's up? What's your argument?
Yeah, you like that? So, first, Jay, I just want to let everybody know that Jay has rejected.
Here he's going to go. He's going to go for personal
you're
stuff.
Running, dude. You're running.
Yeah, you're going to go personal stuff and then say I'm running. Do you have an argument?
Hey, Evan, do you have any? Hey, Jay, you're going to let me speak?
Do you have an actual argument?
Stop talking. I just waited. Evan, you're going to stop.
Evan,
Jay.
I'm the
moderator. You have to adjust your attitude.
Nah, you guys are going to stop talking.
Do you have anything to say in
yeah, you're going to let me speak a sentence. I just waited.
Okay, but it's not about me, so you're going to make an argument or not?
Oh, I'm going to make an argument. I'll let everybody know that you refuse to debate the Diamond Brothers and you're running.
Because I think they're a crazy cult, and that's not an argument.
No, it's because you know you're going to lose. So I just wanted to get that on the table.
So where's your argument?
Jay, hold on, Jay.
So he doesn't have an argument.
I'm letting everybody know that you refuse to debate the top.
Yeah, I don't debate crazy cults, correct? Because there's no point in it.
Amen.
Nobody takes Ted seriously, bro.
So he waited all that time to say that he didn't have an actual argument. So now,
can you pick up on the energy? By the way, I just want to let the audience kind of know.
Yeah, it's just anger at me, right? So it's
like anger, and it's
yeah, it's classic Ted behavior.
Yeah, just take it easy. Come in and be respectful. That's all we ask.
I've got about 15 minutes. I'm curious if there's anybody in your audience who's Roman Catholic who wants to make a counter argument in favor of the Pope's authority being legitimate.
All right, so if you've got Roman Catholic arguments, you guys want to bring it up. I do see a lot of people in the queue, as the Brits say. Feel free to request to speak. Raise your hand, because I see a lot of people, so I don't know who is and isn't Roman Catholic. So, just sort of do the raise your hand thing.
While we're waiting, I just want to point out, Sovereign, as you get into this kind of like these discussions, one of the common arguments that Jay pointed out is the development of the papacy argument. And it's actually self-refuting, because Pastor Eternos in Vatican I specifically says that it's been known since the beginning of the Christian religion. Yeah. Like in the same paragraph where it's talking about the infallibility of the Pope. So it's self-refuting to say it developed.
Says what has been known since the beginning.
The infallibility of the Pope. If you read the paragraph,
Satis Cognitum says it too. They both do. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Vatican I itself refutes itself if you argue it developed, because it specifically says it's been known since the beginning of the Christian religion.
What do they base that on? That it's been known since the beginning of the Christian religion?
They're going to go to
quote lines.
Is it the verses in Matthew, or is it?
Yes, Vatican I itself is going to reference Matthew 16. That's exactly what it references to justify it. And ironically, it says it's because the keys were given to Peter. But if you go to Lateran 4, which is also ecumenical for Roman Catholics, it specifically says the keys were given to all the apostles and all their successors. So that's a contradiction between two ecumenical councils.
Yeah, and they also will rely on a lot of sort of quote mines where it's like things taken out of context, things that don't have any context, and then when you go and learn what the context is, it's like, and that doesn't actually teach papal infallibility. So Rome has spoken, cases closed, this kind of stuff, and then you go see the context, and it's nothing to do with what they think it says. So all the Roman Catholics left after that one guy. So I thought we would have somebody who, raise your hand if you want to come on to argue the Roman Catholic position.
Yeah, I would genuinely like to hear a rebuttal from the Roman Catholics.
So if we got like 400 or 500 people over here on Twitter, or we did it earlier, surely there's a Roman Catholic here. Come on. Use the little raise your hand thingamajig. If you want to hop on, I'll give you the mic. Sean? There was a guy earlier who was saying he wanted to come on. Now he left. Best Buy, are you one? Best Ball? Here we go. This guy says he's Roman Catholic. Noah? Just unmute, Noah. You're on, Noah. Just got to unmute, dude.
I'm sorry, folks. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. Before I give any rebuttals or anything about the Pope, I just want to say that, we complicate everything. And we divide and conquer everything. And we're always looking for who's right and who's wrong.
Well, it is a debate, so.
It is. But, like,
that sounds awesome and based to me.
The whole purpose is to have a personal relationship with God. That's where it all begins.
Okay. Well,
are you this relation?
Is this Jack Nicholson?
All right, we're going to move on. So we specifically requested a person who wants to argue the Roman Catholic position, not evangelical testimony.
I don't know. That sounds pretty base to me. Conquer, divide, find truth, separate from error.
Isn't that what Jesus said? I did not come. I came to divide.
We prayed for our bishops to rightly divide the word of the truth. Amen.
King, did you want to speak? You got to unmute, King.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up, man?
So I'm a Roman Catholic, and I have one question about Matthew 16, because I'm kind of a Sedevacantist Catholic, so because I can't really be consistent with the Vatican II and past. Let me see.
Well,
so I was wondering,
as a Roman Catholic who's a Sedevacantist, how are you ever going to have a pope again if Francis has basically chosen all the cardinals to be a bunch of liberals that you think are no longer Catholic as well? How are you going to ever get a pope again?
Honestly, I don't think that's the case. I think it would be that either this is the end times or we would have to rely on Orthodoxy to do that, to come to the Catholic faith, I think.
So you're going to rely on the Orthodox Church to come back to Rome to save the Roman Catholic Church?
I don't expect that, but I think that would be the only real solution.
Okay, well, that's not going to happen. So
yeah, I know.
Have you read Etsy? Have you read the document Etsy Multa?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you not think that, even though that's written against the old Catholics, does the principle in this not refute Sedevacantism?
I think that, I don't think it refutes it entirely, but I can see how it can be used as an argument against it.
Okay. Well, how does the promise that we have, in Vatican I, that there would be successors in the office of Peter to the end of the world, how is the fundamental components of the Roman Church, how is it not lost if it loses its fundamental constituent component of unity, the Roman See?
It would be, be lost in the way that visibly, but I don't think it would be lost invisibly.
No, now you're a Protestant, okay? Because the Vatican I does not say that there's an invisible church, an ethereal, Platonic form of the papacy. The only papacy that you can be in communion with is the visible one over in Rome. You understand? It says that visible unity exists till the end of the world. So you can't switch over to a Protestant invisible church model.
Well, I think that it would still be visible in the way that they exist in the church history. So
No.
that
visible. No, what's visible is the office of unity, the Roman See. So you would have to say that the Roman See continues. Maybe all the other bishops in the world fail, right? If you wanted to preserve the Vatican I position, you can't have the Roman See disappear and still have the visible unity of the Roman Catholic Church. There is no other Roman Catholic Church than the one in Rome.
Right.
That's why Sedevacantism doesn't work. It's a dead end position.
Don't you see how it could be possible that this could be similar to the Old Testament?
No, the whole point. We're not in the Old Testament, bro. Pentecost is the promise of the Holy Spirit to the church to lead and guide her into all truth, as Jesus says in the Gospel of John. So it's not going to leave the church. If the Roman see the Roman see, the Holy Spirit's not going to leave it, and we're going to revert to a pre-Pentecost time in the Old Testament.
Okay. So where would you say I should look into, like, if I want to look into Orthodoxy?
I would say first of all, read John Pontrello's book, Sedevacanist Delusion, because we helped John convert to Orthodoxy out of Sedevacantism. I myself had a period where I thought Seder was correct. So I would say read that. Read Michael Welton's book, Two Paths, and John Pontrello's book, Sedevacantist Delusion. Those are two places to start. Any other Roman Catholics who want to come on, raise your hand. Best Ball, did you want to hop on as a Roman Catholic?
I got another question for you too, Jay, when you get a moment.
Go ahead, Best Ball.
All right. Hey, thanks for letting me talk, guys.
Sure.
Nothing but love for my Orthodox brothers. So you guys were saying the papacy essentially was something that came to be in Vatican I. And in Vatican I, they were claiming it was something that was known throughout all the ages.
No, I was saying it evolved over many, many centuries, but that the claims of Vatican I are ahistorical and retroactively read back into history. The papacy is a see of Peter that existed and eventually, in our view, sort of evolved away from Orthodoxy. So it wasn't invented at Vatican I.
I just want to read something specifically from the Council of Ephesus in 431 AD. So this would have been before the schism. Something that would have been.
We know the quote mines. Luigi has addressed these. Luigi, do you want to address the quote in Ephesus?
Yeah, he's going to read. You're talking about Pope Celestine? Yeah, it's referencing. It's the legate Philip talking about Pope Celestine's letter. Yeah, it's just the same. It's going to be the same language, talking about how the Pope, will never fail. This language is applied to the emperor. It's applied to all the patriarchs in various councils. So what Roman Catholics do is they'll literally quote mine. They'll just pull this one quote that's referencing the Pope specifically, and then they'll ignore all the same quotes that reference the emperor and the other patriarchs. For example, in Constantinople III, Matthew 16 is applied to the emperor. So, and it's like the gates of hell will never prevail against the emperor. So obviously these quotes are honorific and nothing more than that. And so it's disingenuous to apply them to the Pope and not apply them literally to the emperor or to the other patriarchs.
The other thing, too, is that the Roman Catholic Church now admits via the papally approved synods at Chieti and Alexandria, or the documents produced by these working groups or whatever, that these periods are not teaching Vatican I. So what the burden of proof is the Vatican I view, not did Rome sign councils first? Was it called the First See? Was this language used at times? The question is, can you show the Vatican I claims in the first millennium? And Rome admits no.
So can I just read this excerpt? I mean, I wasn't here for earlier in this discussion, instead of, just saying I was going to cherry pick a quote. Can I actually
we knew what you were going to read. So, and you admitted it, yeah.
Would it be okay if I were to read it so if people in the chat who haven't actually heard it before can hear it directly?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, direct quote, Council of Ephesus, 431 AD. There is no doubt, and in fact it has been known in all ages, that the holy and most blessed Peter, prince and head of the apostles, pillar of the faith and foundation of the Catholic Church, received the keys of the kingdom from our Lord Jesus Christ, the Savior and Redeemer of the human race, and that to him was given the power of loosing and binding sins, who down even to today and forever both lives and judges in his successors.
Do you think that Rome and Alexandria and Antioch are his successors?
Yeah, all bishops within the apostolic line are successors, but there's something
No.
unique.
The Petrine sees are who, according to Pope St. Gregory? What are the 3 Petrine sees, according to Pope St. Gregory?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not well-versed enough.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, he says that Rome, Alexandria, and Antioch are the 3 Petrine sees. So by your argument, that would mean that all 3 of those fall under that blessing.
It would not, because it's something very unique happening in this excerpt where it says that the Holy and Most Blessed Peter, Prince and Head of the Apostles.
Yeah, but you don't even understand.
Very, very
You're not understanding the argument that I'm making. Do you understand that all 3?
I understand. You're making that they have equal authority.
No. You missed the point. Those are 3 Petrine sees. They're all from Peter. So you just shot yourself in the foot.
Each of those.
Yeah.
No, I get what you're saying. I understand it.
Well, your reply was not based on understanding. It was based on me thinking that, or saying that it's all the bishops. No, there's 3 Petrine sees. So does that apply to them?
Well, this excerpt specifically says, and head of the apostles. So is there an
that has nothing to do with his
others?
That has nothing to do with his successors, who are all Petrine.
Does it say for the other Petrine sees specifically head of the apostles?
Well, Constantinople 869, which is ecumenical for you, calls all 5 patriarchs the heads of the church. So and then Constantinople 3 calls the emperor the head. So headship is not exclusively applied to the Pope. It's applied to the emperor. It's applied to all 5 patriarchs.
Yep. So this is why your quote mines don't work.
I appreciate you guys letting me share. I'll let the audience decide for themselves. I appreciate it.
And this is the general point that I think, Jay, you were pointing out, that everything you said about Peter being the head therefore applies to Antioch and Alexandria, and not just Rome. So for some reason, I know the reason, the Roman Catholics going to think that the Petrine See only applies to Rome, and all the cherry-picking verses that they do, well, that's just Roman papal supremacy.
Well, if you read the letter here from Pope St. Gregory the Great, his epistle, he actually uses the Petrine key language. He cites Matthew 16 of the keys, and he says, "For he himself, Peter, exalted the see, which he deigned to be in the rest of his life. He himself adorned the see that he sent his disciple Alexandria." And he himself is thinking that this was some special thing in Rome. That's why they don't have a good argument. They just say, well, it's only in Rome because Peter died there. And they come up with these weird arguments to try to say that it's only Rome, because they immediately realize that Peter isn't just the Bishop of Rome. He also has lineage in Alexandria and Antioch. But then they have to cut off Alexandria and Antioch from falling under this Petrine privilege. So why is it only Rome? Oh, it's a tradition. So then they fall back on a silent tradition.
Yeah, ironically, I actually just remembered this too. In that same council, and this is on page 308 of Price's Acts of Ephesus, it calls the emperor the divine and inviolable head. In that same council that he just referenced, it calls the emperor the divine and inviolable head. So, like, this idea of headship in the very council he pointed to references someone other than the Pope.
Yeah, that's why it's selective usage of the language. For example, in Basil's letters, which we did a whole podcast on Basil's letters, when he's having problems in the East, he appeals to Rome. Rome doesn't help out, and he calls the Bishop of Antioch the head of the body. So he's calling the Bishop of Antioch the head of the church. He appeals to Rome. Rome doesn't give any help. Basil then says Rome is absolutely worthless. Oh, so much for the first see, so much for it solving all these problems, and it's not even called the head. He calls Antioch the head. So this is because this language is used amongst the church fathers throughout as a sign and as an honorific thing, as Luigi said. It doesn't always have a theological baggage a la Vatican I like Roman Catholics want it to have. They read that into it.
I also want to bring up something, too, about the indefectibility. Interesting enough, last Sunday was the Gospel of Mark, and do you guys just remember what what the gospel was about. The myrrh-bearing women.
Yeah. Running to the tomb, yeah.
Yeah, and the angel says, go get the disciples. Oh, and Peter. Remember, so talking about defectibility, Peter himself had defected. Like, so this idea that Peter and the See of Peter can't defect is crazy to me. It's like it's obviously pointed out to the angel too. He's not even part of the disciples at that point.
Well,
he's going to be brought back in, but
if Rome can't defect, then why does Paul warn the Roman Church that they will be grafted out if they fail to believe? I mean, these warnings make no sense if this is really something impossible, right? And he doesn't say, "Oh well," but they'll say, "Well, he's not talking about the Bishop of Rome. He's talking about." Oh yeah, sure. No, it's a warning to the entire Roman Church. If you are unfaithful, you will be grafted out. There's no special privilege to this church. And in fact, it's the same type of warning that the churches in the book of Revelation of the seven churches of Asia Minor, they're warned that they can have their lampstand removed in the same type of removal as Rome can have, right? Being grafted out through unbelief or through being puffed up with pride. Isn't it interesting that Paul warns the Roman Church of being puffed up with pride and the possibility of being grafted out? Almost prophetic, perhaps. So Sovereign Brah had to leave. We still got a full house here. Anybody else who would like to pop on, you're welcome to. Roman Catholic. Yeah.
Appreciate you having me on, Jay. I got to hop off.
Okay.
See you.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Appreciate it, Luigi. Yeah.
God bless.
Father Moses, you're here. Did you want to speak to something?
he's busy lifting weights right now.
Okay.
Sorry, Father.
Let's see. We got a bunch of people who are in here. Luke, does Luke want to speak?
Unmute.
You have to unmute, man. All right. Luke's not able to speak. Michael.
Am I good to talk, or?
Yeah, what's up, man?
I have a little bit different of a question. By the way, Jay, I just found you about 3 weeks ago, oddly enough. Amazing work and amazing apologetics. Thank you.
Thank you.
But I have a slightly odd question I may ask you gentlemen. See, I try to stay very unbiased. My goal is to get people into the church rather than into a specific church. I'm Orthodox, just that's clear. And what I'm trying to do with my Christian channel, The Cross Crusader, is to really just get people into the church, opening the Bible, questioning what they believe, and I'm finding it pretty difficult to stay unbiased. And I was wondering what your perspective, both Jay and both of the fathers here, what your perspectives would be on me trying to remain unbiased.
What do you mean remain unbiased? I don't really think we can be unbiased. What do you mean?
Yeah, I think that's kind of my issue that I'm going through right now. So I'm trying to remain unbiased in the aspect of I'm trying to when people ask me questions, I respond in both the Catholic and the Orthodox. So I try my best to give both perspectives so that people can choose, which church they go into. or enter into?
Well, yeah, well, I'm not trying to be rude to you. I don't think that's the right approach. I don't think we can mute. I mean, these are mutually exclusive positions. For example, if you're Orthodox, you have to believe, for example, in the Palamite synods, and they are mutually exclusive with Roman Catholicism.
I mean, you don't offer the Jewish perspective, right? For obvious reasons.
Or the Islamic one. That is true.
So why offer the perspective of a heretical sect? Like, doesn't make any sense.
That's pretty much answered straight up, and it's been heavy on myself. So.
Well, I would say I would recommend an antidote, perhaps, to that would be this book right here. So get this book by Norman Russell, where he's translated. It's really just a translation of the Palamite synods and a bunch of letters of St. Gregory Palamas and the life of St. Gregory. So that would be one really good way to maybe drill into that question. Also, if you're more of a history guy, not really a theology guy, Christian East and the Rise of the Papacy by Papadakis and Meyendorff really solidifies this period of departure. So I'm glad that Sovereign Brah raised this question about this time period, because there's not a lot of books that are really good about this period, and that's why I'm so glad that Papadakis and Meyendorff wrote this excellent book, because a lot of people, prefer history to straight up theology. It's too technical. And this book is really good at being historical, but then bringing in some of the theological disputes of this crucial period of departure, 1071 to 1453. So if you're more of a history buff, I highly, highly recommend everybody read this book. It's great. Christian East and the Rise of the Papacy, the Church, 1071 to 1453 is one of the best texts. Now, there's a lot of other great texts, Michael Welton's Two Paths, these kinds of things. There's also the new Soshinsky book, which it's good for maybe drilling into a lot of these quote mines that we've heard tonight. So we've had, Ephesus thrown out, and there's going to be, Leo has spoken, Rome has spoken, cases closed, etc. And Soshinsky's new book, Papacy and the Orthodox, it kind of has chapters on a lot of these topics, which is really good. But yeah, so we're getting really good material published of late on these subjects. But the Papadakis Meyendorff book is by far one of the best in a long time. And then the Norman Russell book is just like, this is now essential. Like we haven't had an English translation of the Palamite synods really until this, and this is all of them. So this, and the reason that's so important is that we've had so many of these Roman Catholic car salesmen trying to tell us that, we're all saying the same thing, and actually Palamism is can be reconciled with Thomism. No, this explicitly rejects the Thomistic reading of Palamos in the fourth Tomos. The fourth Palamite Synod specifically rejects the Thomistic view. So enough of this nonsense and all the car salesmanship that they've been telling us for so long. Sublime Providence. Got to unmute, man. We've got a super chat from MM, and he says, does Elijah and the prophets of Baal show us that all occultism is fake and gray? Well, it shows that in that instance to be fake and gray, because they're cutting themselves and their demon doesn't manifest. But I mean, we have other places in Scripture where occultism seems to be real. Saul and the Witch of Endor, Samuel appears. We have, Paul casting out demons in the book of Acts. One of the girl who's a fortune teller is said to have a pythonic spirit. I think in the Greek it says something like that. Jonas and John Brace are said to mimic the first two, quote, miracles. Whether they did miracles or not. In other words, we have some instances in Scripture where there does appear to be real demonic activity. So I wouldn't say that all occultism is fake and gray just from the Elijah story. But certainly the prophets of Baal didn't seem to have any powers. Did you? Go ahead, man. You got to unmute. You're on. You got your hand raised. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, that's me. Okay, how you doing?
What's up?
I'm doing pretty good. So can I assume that? real quick, huge fan of you. I see Rachel Wilson in listening to. Huge fan of her and her husband. Just wanted to say right quick, if we all believe in a universal Catholic and apostolic church, and I assume we all agree in this, right? I'm Catholic.
Well, we don't accept that the Roman Catholic Church is still part of that body.
Fine, yeah, but the thing with the Roman Catholic Church is the Roman part is just the Western rites. We have Eastern rites. So this 23.
No, it's not. It's not. No. It's not about right. It's about the Roman See and Vatican I. So it's not just about the rites.
Yeah, I understand all that. Mostly, this is not. It's somewhat of a theological issue, but that can be worked on in various councils. This was an ancient political tension that happened between the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. That's what this is about.
No, that's part of it. That's what we already argued earlier. It's partly geopolitical, but it's also theological. We can never accept the double eternal hypostatic procession. We can never accept created grace.
And you don't have to, because it's not necessary that you do that under the Eastern rites. So my thing is this.
That's not true. That's not true. Eastern Rite Catholics are expected to accept Vatican I, regardless of the fact that Melkites and other people pretend like they don't have to. It's just simply not true. All that says is that it's a contradictory position that allows for you to pretend that you don't accept Vatican I. But Vatican I is binding on everybody. So it's just a made-up thing that Eastern Catholics don't have to accept Vatican I. Vatican I does not speak that way.
Certainly, Vatican I can be changed. So
no, Vatican I cannot be changed. What are you talking about?
Of course it can.
No, it cannot.
Of course. Why can't it be
You
changed?
can't change. That's an ecumenical council's dogma. You can't change dogma.
From the seat of the Pope, you can, because he can declare infallibility and change it.
Okay.
So it can't be changed.
No.
So,
all that says is that the position again is inconsistent, because supposedly unchangeable dogma can be changed by the Pope. So again, that's another refutation of the position. So
that's fine. We understand the history.
How is that fine if that's a contradiction?
It's fine because the Western Church had to deal with more than the Eastern Church did at the time. There was a lot of changes that the Western Church made to acclimate to the various populations to get them on board. So, and then when you look at the sheer number difference between how many Catholics there are and as many Orthodox there are, is not much bigger than a Protestant denomination.
That's not true, but that's also a fallacy. So you moved to a fallacy of a numbers game. So was the true church determined by numbers when most of the church was Arian or semi-Arian in the 4th century?
The true church is based on apostolic succession.
I just asked you. No, so you're not answering the question. In the 4th century, the numbers game was on the side of the Arians and the semi-Arians. So is it numbers game or not?
No, not necessarily. I'm talking more strategically. So I'm not saying this. I'm saying I want to see a universal apostolic church.
It already exists. So it's not determined by numbers. Catholicity is determined by the fullness of truth. That's why St. Maximus says that I would be amongst the small band of true Catholics, even if most of the bishops were not Catholic.
Do you want to save the soul of everyone on earth? If you had the ability to?
Again, you're presupposing that we're both part of a giant ecumenical church, and we're not.
I understand that Orthodox don't see Catholics as being fully in line.
Okay, so then just stating to me an ecumenical position doesn't prove your position. Your position is incorrect.
No, well, let me articulate my position. My position is this. My position is there are way more Catholics than there are Orthodox.
I already addressed the numbers argument. Do you not understand why that's a bad argument?
No. That's only a part of the argument. So the argument doesn't consist of just one claim. So it exists through a series of premises, and we'll get to a conclusion. All right. So deductively, so I can say the vast majority of Christians, period, are Catholic. Catholicism is the largest church that has apostolic succession. All you need to be Christian is just accept the Nicene Creed. We can discuss the Filioque. But outside of that, the point is strategically.
Okay, so in other words, we're not going to care about correct doctrine. We're going to make up an idea of what's strategic.
No. We do care about what's
So
correct.
now you're moving the
But I'm saying
goalposts.
that conversation can be had within the church. So that can be had. We understand all of the history associated with it. We're in the present. Right now,
This
Rome
is
has been
just
reaching out for hundreds of years to Orthodoxy.
How is this an argument? How is this an argument for the Roman Catholic position? All I'm hearing is you talking around a bunch of stuff. Where's the argument?
Okay, here's the argument. The Pope was always considered the first amongst equals. I believe that all the patriarchs of all of Orthodoxy, the original four, which is, like you said, Rome, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem, and then, of course, Constantinople later on after Constantine. We believe all of those is legitimate, and to a degree, even Anglicans to a degree. Anglicans drastically moved away from doctrine, but they also have...
Okay, so your argument is that because the Roman Catholic Church accepts a wider swath of what's considered Christian, that strategically means it's better and improves it. That's a terrible argument.
No, it's because it's bigger, it accepts more, and there's more...
Again, I already addressed these arguments. So you're just going to keep talking around it. Boycott, what's up? Those are terrible arguments. I mean, by that line of argumentation, the more broad I make the most ecumenist position is therefore true. So why don't I just be a perennialist and say that, oh, we're all on the same team because all the religion, that's actually the attitude of Nostra Aetate, is that all the scale of the world religions, they're all on a graded scale, and the Muslims are like 40% correct. So they're part of our strategic alliance as well. So if I just move the goalpost, that makes the position true. That's a terrible argument. Exactly. People in the chat, well, by this argument, Islam is part of the faith too. Yeah, exactly. That's the whole attitude of Nostra Aetate. Well, we all call on the same God because we worship one God. Ooh. What does Lumen Gentium 16 say right here? We're all calling on the same God because there's one God.
Part of the problem with that argument too, Jay, is that if all these different sects have apostolic succession and then all of their priesthood are valid, including the Anglicans, then all of their sacraments are valid. So then you actually need to be part of the Roman Catholic Church to receive the sacraments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if the Roman Catholic position is that you need the sacraments in order to be saved, and you say, well, look, the sacraments are outside of Catholicism, then you can be saved outside of it as well.
Yeah, and I mean, he's not even correct. Leo the 13th already stated about the nullity of Anglican orders. So the Roman Catholic position, apostolic cure, Anglicans do not have order, valid. They do not have valid apostolic succession according to Pope Leo the 13th. So again, maybe now they do. So again, this is an ever-evolving, changing thing, and this guy should understand. He said, well, the Pope can do this. The Pope can change Vatican I. You notice he said the Pope can change. No, he can't. Oh, but wait, he actually can, because the religion is the worship of the Pope. That's the whole religion. So even though in 1896, Anglicans don't have valid orders, well, according to the post-Vatican II, now maybe they can. You see, so it's always subject to flux and change, and it's really at the whims of whatever the Pope says, which is whatever the need is of the time. So it's nothing to do with what's objectively true. It's literally based around the fiat, the divine word of the Pope. And that's why the position is obviously not true.
Nothing to do with objective.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yep.
Hi. Yeah. So I guess what's convinced me of Catholicism is the overwhelming evidence that Catholicism has that's unique to Catholicism. So my central question I would ask is, when God reveals himself publicly, why does he do so exclusively through the Catholic Church?
No.
And I can...
No idea where I mean, it's a terrible argument. So,
here, can I tell you where I'm going with it real quick?
You mentioned all these evidences. So what's the evidences? You didn't give one.
Here's an evidence. Yeah. So Fatima, just real quick. I have
here we
tons,
go.
but let's
Here we
go
go.
with Fatima.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how did 3 children know the exact time and place that this supernatural event would occur? So
well, you're assuming it's supernatural, first of all. So how do you know that?
Yeah, but you had 70,000.
Okay, so he's not even going to listen. So hold on, that's what a newspaper says. Have newspapers ever lied?
Yes, but
but here no. Have you read it? Have you read that? Well, let's take it to the. So you're going to say a miracle claim. How hold on. How many religions and groups out there claim miracles?
Not many claim public miracles where thousands witness it, and you have overnight.
There are plenty of Hindu yogis that claim public miracles. Sai Baba claimed many public miracles. He had many Padawans underneath him that thought he was a miracle worker.
But not you. Again, my point is that in Catholicism there are thousands of witnesses, or it's objectively verified, and I can name other instances as well. Could I just
hold on.
Okay.
So Orthodox churches claim miracles. We claim the miracle of the Holy Fire. Okay, this is publicly witnessed every year in Jerusalem. So wait a minute. So what? How do I know where if I'm not visibly, empirically there? How am I going to judge the faith on miracle claims?
So okay, here, just real quick. So I guess my answer to that is it's different.
It's not different. You want it to be different. How's it different?
Well, it's different in that you had 70,000. The consensus was, and it wasn't all, we're all Catholic Christian.
Oh, okay. So it's a miracle if it's 70,000, but not if it's, I don't know, 20,000 in Jerusalem. Like what's the miracle proof number? 30,000, 50,000?
No.
This is arbitrary.
I agree with your principle, but here, just let me finish my point real quick. You're very intelligent, but I just want to say one thing. So what happened was it was pouring down rain, puddles everywhere.
I know the story of Fatima. I used to be a Roman Catholic man. Okay, we don't need the story. Okay, we know what Fatima is. We know the claims of it. How am I supposed to know that that's the miracle that I go with versus another miracle claim? Is it the specific number of people? What's the miracle number? What's the magic miracle number? 50,000?
Yeah, thousands of people witness. And if Catholicism is false, then how did 3 children Catholic know the exact time and place that this?
Yeah, I believe that's a geopolitically motivated story to prepare for World War I, and that the Western powers use that as a way to prepare war with Russia.
So you think, okay, well, if you think it's a lie, you think that everyone, all the witness stories and the newspaper articles and all of that, it's all false?
I believe that even if it were true, it has nothing to do with proving what religion is true, because every religion has all kinds of claims. Every religion has all kinds of miracles. So there's no way that miracles can be the thing that determine the true and the false faith.
But not to this degree, though.
That's arbitrary. That's arbitrary. So again, I can come up with, if you go to Russia... If you go to Russia, you will hear countless stories of miracles. So do you hear me arguing that proves orthodoxy? Because in the 1,000-year history of Russian Orthodoxy, there's miracle claims.
If there were thousands of witnesses.
So again, it doesn't matter, because there's nothing about the number of witnesses that makes it suddenly the one that's true. Because there's thousands of witnesses in Jerusalem, and you discount that one. So then you have to come up with. So now there's miracles in the false faith? If there's miracles in the false faith, then the miracles don't prove the true faith.
No. The miracle of the fire in Jerusalem hasn't been objectively verified, because another example would be...
Okay, so now you're arbitrary. Yeah, so right. But I'm supposed to accept 100-year-old news stories that happen to fit into geopolitical strategies. Let me ask you a question about Fatima.
Sure.
Where does communism come from? Russia?
Okay, yeah, okay.
Does it?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Where does it come from?
You tell China?
I'm not trying to be mean to you, man, but no. It doesn't come from China. It doesn't come from Russia. You don't know where communism originates? You believe Fatima, you don't even know where it originates?
Tell me.
It comes out of England.
Okay.
Okay, so how come Mary didn't mention that?
How come Mary didn't mention that?
Yeah.
What's your point?
She said because there's a geopolitical motivation to what she said, preparing for World War One.
But what's your point, though?
Okay, what's my point is that it's not Mary if she's not telling you the truth about where it comes from, and she's giving the impression that it comes out of Russia. Communism doesn't come from Russia; it comes from England, like Marx and Engels, and it was exported to Russia. You don't know this?
But in regard to the Marian apparition, what? I mean, are you talking about the third secret of Fatima?
Okay, no.
Because that hasn't been revealed. There's just skepticism. Because that, I mean...
I'm not trying to be mean. I'm going to have to pull out because if I continue, I'm going to get mean. And then people are going to use that as an excuse to say that I'm just being mean. So I'm not trying to be mean to you, but I'm going to have to pull out now because I'm going to start getting sassy, and that will just be a way for people to get mad at me. So to those that are wondering, my point is that there's no arbitrary number to tell us the true miracle. Oh, well, when it hits 50,000 people, that's when we know it's the miracle that proves that religion to be true.
But if you sign up today, you can actually get your own miracle calculator where you can calculate the exact number.
I mean, this is how Roman Catholics think. I'm not trying to be mean, but this is like, remember Cameron's Bayesian spreadsheet argument that will mathematically prove the papacy? This is how stupid this is.
You could actually, if we were actually bad guys, we could have a whole like multi-marketing pyramid scheme where we send papist.
People think I'm joking. When Cameron says that he converted, he says he converted because he came up with a Bayesian spreadsheet, QuickBooks argument, where mathematically he can prove with 90% certainty or some ridiculous thing that we are 95.4% certain that the papacy is true based on my Bayesian. This is literally the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
And how can these miracles testify to the truth of Roman Catholicism if it's patently false?
You notice that what happens in Roman Catholicism is that when people are confronted with the historical and the theological problems, that's all brushed aside, and then you immediately run to Fatima. And I've talked to so many Roman Catholics who they say I have to shut my brain off and just jump to Fatima because that's what I fall back on. So total irrationality for something, by the way, which is supposed to be supremely scholastic and rational, but then it's ultimately
did, right? With
exactly
my debate, he just went into subjective prelist experiences.
People think I'm joking. This is an actual. We did a whole live stream laughing and making fun of this preposterous argument from Cameron over here on Pints with Aquinas, where Matt Fred. Please tell me, Cameron, as we sit up here on top of the Vatican, on the roof of the Vatican, smoking cigars, pretending I'm Australian James Bond, tell me what's the QuickBooks argument for the papacy? Oh, well, I'll tell you, I laid out a QuickBooks spreadsheet and it proves the papacy. I'm not joking. That's like literally what the argument is. Anyway, so we got other Roman Catholics who want to pop on, I assume. Tyler has been waiting for a while. What's up, Tyler? You have to unmute, Tyler.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. All right, Jay Dyer, I'm a big fan. I am merely a student of the faith. I am not an expert, but I was on the fence between Eastern Orthodoxy and Catholicism. I decided to go with Eastern Catholicism, but I thought I might say some of my objections and see how you refute it. I won't be able to.
Okay, before we go to that, I want to ask you, I think David made kind of the ultimate kill shot video where, really Eastern Catholicism is the strongest argument against Roman Catholicism. So how do we get Mar Mari Nestorius being revered? How do we get revisionism to where people who are considered heretics like Palamas, Mark of Ephesus, Photius, now they're revitalized and renovated to be saints? I mean, does that not tell you that this is a geopolitically motivated altering and changing position where people who are heretics for centuries can suddenly be saints?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think there are it's hard to say. I'm still trying to work that out.
Okay, well, have you seen David's classic video on that?
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't seen
Well, here's the video. Eastern Catholicism refutes Rome, and he fleshes out a lot of these types of arguments. So go ahead.
Okay. Okay, cool. So one of the things that really was tough for me is there was an argument made by Pope Leo. He opposed Canon 28 of the Council of Chalcedon.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm familiar. So do you know? Did you look into why he opposed it?
Yeah. I guess I really like the idea that I don't like that Constantinople could just be declared the second see without any apostolic pedigree, and I guess that was that.
Okay.
I didn't.
But you understand Rome eventually agreed to that.
No, I didn't understand that.
Yeah. So a couple hundred years after Pope Leo, Rome accepts that Constantinople is second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But okay. That's I'm not going to refute your arguments because I'm not an expert.
No, that's true.
So.
You can go look it up.
But the other thing I would like to say is that would you say that Pope Leo wouldn't you think that Pope Leo saw Roman supremacy in a similar way as defined by Vatican I?
No, not at all.
Really?
No, if you read about what they did at Chalcedon, did they just accept what Leo said and Leo spoke, case closed? No, they spent several days comparing what Leo says to Cyril. Cyril was the test of orthodoxy at Chalcedon, not Leo.
Okay.
And have you watched Father Price on Reason and Theology?
No.
Okay, well, when Father Price is on or is on Reason and Theology with Lofton and Ibarra, they say, "What do you think about papal supremacy at Chalcedon?" And he says there was no papal supremacy at Chalcedon, and they pulled down that clip because it was an embarrassment. And he's the one. He's the one that's the translator of the councils that everyone accepts. The Price. The Price translation. All right, let me play it for you. I've got it over here on my my clips page.
Okay.
And I said, "What about breakfast at Tiffany's?" She said, "I think I remember the something." All right, here it is. Let's see. Shorts. It's a short clip. All right, so this is Father Price on Reason and Theology. I can't get where's the sound? Why is there no sound?
Hated him.
Well,
hold on, I got to go back to the beginning of it now. Hold on. Here we go.
Stated him.
Well,
it's not letting me move the cursor back to the beginning of this. Hold on, let's do this one.
I owe the banks a lot of money, but little do they know,
Hold on.
No worries.
This is driving me crazy. I gotta make my screen a little bit smaller to reach the button.
Chalcedon feel they needed to judge Theodoret if Leo had already reinstated him.
Why did Chalcedon feel the need to judge Theodoret if Leo had, as the Pope, had already reinstated him? Is the question to Price.
Well, they didn't recognize Roman jurisdiction in the eastern provinces. So there's
and then Ibarra's face drops, and he can't believe that he said that. Now, this is echoed in the scholarship that Rome now promotes and accepts, both at the Chieti document, paragraph 19, which says that the Roman bishop did not express canonical authority or exercise canonical authority over the churches of the East. Exactly what Price says. And then the Alexandria document goes way further than the Chieti document and admits about 90% of the Orthodox arguments against the papacy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Have you read the Alexandria document?
No.
Okay, so this is a paper.
Let's see. What else was I going to say? There's one other thing I wanted to say.
Sure. Go ahead.
Let's see. What was it? Oh yeah. The Council of Sardica. So the one thing I kept getting in like Orthodox circles was Rome had this primacy of honor, which just didn't jive well with me because it just like didn't seem consistent with history. That like certainly Rome had way more of a primacy than just honor, and I think the Council of Sardica was just a clear rebuttal of that.
Yeah, I totally disagree. In fact, if you read the very document I just mentioned, paragraph 19, 3 sentences prior to the statement that the Bishop of Rome did not exercise authority in the East is about the canons of Sardica, and let me read it. Over the century, many appeals were made to the Bishop of Rome from the East in disciplinary matters, such as the deposition of a bishop. An attempt was made at the Synod of Sardica in 343 to establish rules for this procedure. Sardica was received at the Council of Trullo in 692. The canons of Sardica determined that a bishop who had been condemned could appeal to the Bishop of Rome, and that the latter, if he deemed appropriate, could order a retrial to be conducted by the bishops in the province neighboring the bishop's own see. It's not a de facto autocratic move of the Bishop of Rome. Appeals regarding these disciplinary matters were also made to Constantinople and to other sees, the very thing I said in the Ibarra debate when I debated Ibarra, which they were all laughing at, but is right here in their own Roman documents. Such appeals to sees were always treated in a synodical way. So the very argument that Roman Catholics try to make is in this Roman Catholic papally approved document admitted to be interpreted in the Orthodox view.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, if you read Sardica, it's retrial. It's not autocratic unilateral operations. And it admits that there's appeals were made to Constantinople and I think even Alexandria. I think even Athanasius. There's discussions of appeals being made to Athanasius at Alexandria. So I brought that up in the Ibarra debate, and people were acting like that's not true, and it is true.
Yeah, I never, it was tough for me to assent to Vatican I, but I just could not see Rome as just being a primacy of honor. I knew that it was more than that, but at the same time, Vatican I was, the language in Vatican I, it's hard for me to reconcile that with the...
Okay. Well, setting aside all these reconciliation of these ancient documents, does it look like the present-day Vatican has maintained the faith of the ancient church, praying in mosques towards Mecca?
It's tough because I feel like liberalism has creeped into all churches.
But this is different because the Roman church is built on the guy in Rome. The Orthodox church is not built on one dude.
Yeah. But ultimately,
do you believe in indefectibility, right? Because the selling point of Rome is infallibility, indefectibility, solutions to crises, preservation of unity, Do you believe that that's what Rome does? Do you accept that we worship the same God as Muslims and Jews and Hindus?
I assent to the Vatican I teaching without fully understanding it at this point. That's really where I stand.
Well, this is Vatican II teaching, though.
Yeah, and Vatican II, obviously, I have to.
Okay.
So as a Catholic, I have to.
Right.
But I would say that I'm questioning it at this point. I'm trying to do my research. I've been on the fence for a while.
Yeah, I understand.
So,
I mean, I struggled with it too for a while. I understand.
It sounds. Can I throw in one thought, Tyler? Just something to consider.
Yeah.
I mean, forgive me because I don't want this to sound harsh. We obviously don't know each other, so this is not a personal criticism or attack or anything like that.
No worries.
But it sounds very cultish. So it's like you get into arguments that don't make sense, that don't add up. You can't trust the things that you're seeing right in front of your eyes, and then the response is like, yeah, but I have to believe those things, and it's like that's not a good place to be. I've been Orthodox for 17 years, and I literally can say I've never had that attitude. I've never stopped and thought, you know what, the church is doing something totally cattywampus that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and I've just got to kind of turn my brain off and just accept that this is part of being Orthodox, that I have to kind of accept this type of behavior. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, that's true. But how'd you guys feel about female deacons?
Well, it's not even how we feel about female deacons. It's like you have a group in Alexandria who's been making a lot of unilateral decisions in their own diocese. If you actually understand what's going on there, they've had huge problems with their own clergy being upset with their local bishops because they're not listening to them, right? So there's a whole host of issues that are going on that were prior to this, and then you have them, quote-unquote, ordaining a deaconess to a role that has never existed historically within the church. But, again, I don't have to say that I accept that, right? Yeah. That's the difference, is that if I'm Roman Catholic and the Pope does all these cattywampus things, I have to say, well, I'm wrong, and even though you know what I'm saying? I'm wrong, even though it looks like what he's doing is really wrong and heretical, because he can't make bad decisions. He can't do bad things. And I think that's the point that Jay is going back to, is look, since the beginning of Christianity, there's been heretics in the church. That's not this isn't like a new concept or something. The point being that when everything relies upon papal decree and papal decision, you basically have to turn your brain off to all kinds of wackadoodle things that literally don't make any sense whatsoever.
Father, that's an interesting point too. We see a lot of this, especially the Roman Catholics, that when a problem comes in, we're having obviously a problem in Alexandria that happened, that this is just unheard of in history. We've never seen.
Well,
this is all of church history.
Well, it's like a gotcha moment. Oh, we got you. And we're like, well, how so?
Well,
if we agree to disagree, we agree that it shouldn't have happened. Yeah. And we agree with the canons on why it shouldn't have happened, right? The woman was not a monastic. She's not 40 years old. She's serving in a liturgical role that's never existed in the church, right? We can make that argument, and we're not outside of the church or in open rebellion or defiance or anything else for saying that.
Yeah, I think that the key.
The Pope, that's your problem.
Yeah, the key is to see that it's not a question of who's got more or less liberalism. That's not it. It's a question of which system has systemic level problems that invalidate the system. That's the difference. So if you have a decentralized church, which we would admit, for example, many patriarchs of Constantinople in church history have been heretics. That doesn't affect the Orthodox worldview or ecclesiological structure. It's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. But it's not devastating to the system. If the Roman See defects and teaches error for the church, then that's devastating to the system. So this is two different. It's different types of problems determine whether the system works or not.
And I know this is going to sound kind of silly or maybe trite to some people, but honestly, I feel like a lot of this stuff, honestly, it just has to do with manhood. And there's this weird cope where you have to be lockstep with the Pope, and he's he's your defining figure. It's a weird anti-masculine take. And beyond that, when you talk about the systemic, problems, it's like the homosexuality amongst the clergy. I mean, this is not something we're making up. This is something, I've heard from numerous Roman Catholics who are like, yeah, when so-and-so went to seminary, basically all the guys he was in seminary with were all homosexuals. And this was a known thing.
I talked with my Eastern Catholic priest. He mentioned that in seminary, there's definitely a huge problem with homosexuality.
Yeah, huge would be almost an understatement with how it's like catastrophic. It's almost to the point where it's literally just active. The problem is too, a lot of these guys are active homosexuals. Like it's not even that you're just getting homosexuals. I'm not throwing I'm not throwing shade at them. Obviously, we know there were saints and holy people within Orthodoxy who did things, but they are people who are active in that participation of those activities. And
I think
that's where you're getting all your clergy from. To me, it's like, it's weird. I don't know why people go, oh man, what I really want to do is go hang out with a bunch of gay priests. And it's like, bro, go to Orthodoxy, you get a bunch of, you get a bunch of, and I hate the word based, but you get a lot of solid men who are married, and queerdos, like they're just normal guys. Anyways, sorry, a little rant.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I was on the fence for a very long time. I was even going to Father Josiah's parish at Riverside, and then I just felt like I needed to start partaking in the sacramental life, even though I'm still like a student. So maybe I made a quick judgment, but I just I thought that like it's more important for me to partake in the sacramental life. That's why I went Eastern Catholic, because I saw Eastern Catholicism as like the ultimate fence sitters, basically.
Yeah, but the problem with all that is like you're being initiated into something, right? And so it's hard to be initiated into something, period. And as a man, that is part of the process. You know what I'm saying? Like, I lift weights, and I've got a couple of guys who lift weights with me at my house. Nobody shows up on day one and impresses everybody. That's okay. Nobody's going to put you down for doing that. But what we're looking for is effort and integrity over time to prove yourself as being part of the group. That's a normal masculine experience of being with other men. And anybody who goes, okay, hey, you came to church for 1 month, and now I'm going to commune you, it's like, that's a bonk. I just like, as a priest, I'm like, how can you even vet somebody in a month or 3 months or a week? Candace Owen, the irony, like Candace Owens is just like, oh, I want to become Catholic, and so now I'm Catholic. It's like, where's your catechumenship? Like, where's your instructions? Where's your renunciations? Like, how do you, in the early church took 3 years. It took 3 years to become a Christian in the early church. And now we've reduced it in the modern Orthodox church to like a year, which I'm still not even convinced is enough. And now you got modern Catholicism where it's like a matter of weeks or months or days, whatever else. Like, how can a person be transformed? And maybe that's part of the reason why so many people who are Roman Catholic don't actually follow or even believe in the dogmas. So, I don't know. Sorry, forgive my rant.
I appreciate it. And Tyler, I'm not sure, we're going to have to move on because we got a lot of people. But great questions, Tyler. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see. We got another Tyler. So, Tyler Manino. What's up, Tyler? And by the way, before you go, we had a super chat here asking a question. Noah M says for $3. Jay, I asked this earlier. It might have been missed. Bishop Alexander Golitsyn is my bishop. I met him recently before my baptism. While he does think that Origen led an exemplary life, he told me that he defers to the Fifth Ecumenical Council and does not believe in universal salvation. Now, the issue was not whether he believed in universal salvation, but whether Bishop Golitsyn said that Origen is a saint. And in the Orthodox Church, a saint is a person who's experienced uncreated light and has lived a holy life. Origen is not a person that we believe experienced that, nor did he lead a holy life. He was excommunicated from the church. And so his own statement is this.
Lunch was from Origen of Alexandria, the great very great patristic writer. He was not appreciated. 300 years later, they condemned him as a heretic after he had died in the peace of the church, 300 years, which was wrong. But he was still a saint.
So there you go. So the question is not, does he teach universalism? The question is, does he believe that the councils and the church fathers were wrong in condemning Origen? He clearly says that that was wrong. And he believes that he is a saint. So it's not about universalism. And Origen is not a saint. And he did not live rightly. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, so I just, I want to say from the offset that I think, unfortunately, a lot of Catholics are poorly catechized. And, a lot of them just don't know a lot about the history of the church and don't understand a lot of aspects about it. But I'll try a little bit of a Socratic method here. I think we can all agree that there is no such thing as a perfect church, right? Because humans are not infallible.
Well, hold on. So when we say perfect, we don't mean morally, but both Orthodox and Catholics profess to believe that the churches that they adhere to do not officially teach error. So they're not theologically in error.
But my point is that, we're all humans, so we all make mistakes. And clearly throughout every single religion, both Catholic and Orthodox, there have been heretics, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So therefore, I think it's possible that, a church can be, let's say, 99% correct on certain things, but then because of human error, there are some times when it screws up. And where there have been corrupt popes, and a lot of Catholics, myself included, believe that this current pope is a heretic. And I don't think that even though, the church teaches papal infallibility, I don't think that's correct. And I don't think that's a necessary thing to believe for salvation.
Okay, well, Vatican I, which trumps you, says that it is necessary for salvation. It says that the Roman See does not teach error, cannot teach error, and never will. So you have to submit to that. You don't get the right and the liberty as a Roman Catholic to pick and choose dogmas and ecumenical councils.
No, of course, but is it possible that dogmas and ecumenical councils were made in error?
If so, then the Roman Catholic Church is not true.
But like I said, it's 95 to 99% accurate.
No, because the claim about the church is that it never errs. Not that it's right 99% of the time, but that it provides the individual Roman Catholic the certitude to trust the church that it will never err. If there's a 1% chance that it might be erring in this statement, or the next statement, or the next statement. So you see why it's a totalizing system and a totalizing claim?
Yeah, but my point is that claim itself could be the exact error.
Well, then Roman Catholicism is not true. That's all we need. It only takes one to invalidate the system.
So do you think that Orthodoxy is completely perfect and that does not teach any errors whatsoever?
Yes.
Okay. See, I think that it's close to impossible for us to know for sure which is exactly correct. I think it's possible to get 95 to 99%.
Do you know that with certitude?
No, of course. There's no way for us to know for a fact.
No, right? I'm asking, do you know that statement with certitude? Because that's your starting point presupposition. So for that to work, you would have to have certitude about that starting point. I'm asking you if that presupposition is correct with certitude.
Could you repeat that?
We only have 99% certitude, let's say. That was your starting point. I'm asking if that proposition is certain for you.
I'm not saying that's certain, but I'm saying
okay, well, then that's self-refuting.
How is that self-refuting?
Because you've got to have something to start with that's certain.
Right, so I'm saying that I think it's possible for us to be 95 to 99% there.
You missed you just missed the whole point. So you have a starting point that you believe is certain. It is your belief that nobody's certain and everything is 99% certain. For this to work, you've got to be certain about that starting point. And do you not see how that's inconsistent?
Yeah, I think what you're getting at, but at this point, I mean, that's just arguing logic, which I understand what you're trying to do here. But, I mean, the thing is, we agree...
Okay, so logic doesn't matter anymore? So if
logic does matter, but So Catholics believe their faith. Every faith.
All right, so
believes
no,
they're
don't
correct,
change the
correct?
subject. We're on the key point of our starting points. Because I'm not a Roman Catholic. I believe that your starting point is going to determine everything. You have a relativistic starting point. So how do you know that that's true, or that your starting point is right?
Well, because I believe that the Catholic Church is the closest to the original.
Well, how do you know
church.
that, though? Because your starting point is itself fallible, right?
No, I think through people's own research and through discernment, spiritual discernment. I think that's
Okay,
how.
well, but hold on. So people are wrong sometimes, right? So ultimately, it's not the Pope or the Roman Catholic Church. It's you that's the final authority in this system, right?
No, I don't agree with that. I think it has to be in communion with Scripture, closest to Scripture.
No. But you, this is your interpretation of this. That's my point. And you're saying that, well, maybe Vatican I is wrong, and I don't like this. I'm going to take this. So it's you constructing the Roman Catholicism that you want. That's your system.
No, I'm in search of the truth. I'm trying to find the truth.
Yeah, but
what I'm saying is that in the search for the truth, it is possible for things that we formerly thought were true to be false, or things that we formerly thought to be false were true.
Okay, so that's why I went to your starting point, which was ultimately relativistic. Your first principle that you're using.
But I'm not assuming anything. I'm saying
everyone. You are, though. Everyone assumes things. Everybody has presuppositions. Unavoidable.
Oh, okay, that's fair. But
so how do you know that you have the right starting point? Is the question.
Well, I guess technically, does anyone know that really?
Okay, so you're a relativist. That's my point.
No, I'm not a relativist.
How are you not?
Does anyone really?
How are you not?
That's what you're arguing, basically.
What? No, I'm not. What are you talking about? Why would I be a relativist? I'm just asking you your position.
Everyone has a right. My position is born and raised Roman Catholic.
No.
Okay.
Why the position's true? I know what your position is. I'm asking you why the position's true, and it sounds relativistic. And your response is everybody is?
Because I found through my own search, through my own struggles with my own faith, and through trying to do as much research as possible to discover the truth, and through spiritual discernment, through prayer.
Well, how do you know you're discerning right? Maybe you're discerning wrong.
Well, I'm pretty sure I was discerning correctly. But this is a circular argument. I mean,
right.
This could go.
That's right. Now, my point is to show that and illustrate that it is circular. That's correct. I agree. And that was my point.
But your point could be that your point could be then nothing matters. Then essentially, is what you're saying.
No, I'm just saying that the Roman Catholic position and its epistemology leads to these dead ends, because you're trying to make a system that doesn't make sense work, and that's why you're led to these conclusions. Is my point.
No, I don't think that the Catholic Church, solely based on the papal infallibility, I don't think that specific doctrine is the entire basis for the Church. I don't believe that is the core of the
It doesn't
church.
matter what
That's
you
not
think, because Vatican I trumps you, and you don't get to interpret these documents the way you want to. You have to interpret them the way Rome interprets them.
But that's not the core of the faith, though.
It is according to Rome. According to Rome, it is. So you don't get to say that. Do you not understand that it's not a system? You're not a Protestant. You don't get to construct the Roman Catholic system the way you want to.
No, and I'm not claiming to do so.
But you are doing
that. I'm not claiming to do so.
You are doing that before everyone. That is exactly what you're doing. Because you just said, I don't care what Vatican I says. I can choose to not believe that one.
I didn't say that. I didn't care what Vatican I says.
Okay, you said it could be wrong or whatever you said.
It is possible for human beings to make mistakes.
Okay, then you don't believe in the guidance of the Petrine See with the charism of Peter and all that Vatican I teaches. So you don't believe the Roman Catholic Church is teaching.
But you yourself just said that every religion has had heretics, that even Orthodoxy has.
So
Orthodoxy
having a heretic is not the same thing. Having a heretic in the religion is not the same thing as a fundamental contradiction in the theology and the dogma of the religion. Two different things.
Okay, I can see your point with that.
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate that. All right, we're going to move on. Not trying to be rude, but good exchange. I appreciate that. We didn't get, we handled it in a civil way. Ignacio. You gotta unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up, man?
Yeah, so I was watching Catholic Apologetic channel the other day, and I asked a question, that I was choosing either Eastern, to being Eastern Catholic or Orthodox, and they mentioned that I should choose Catholicism because Orthodoxy was the one that actually changed their teachings, and that supposedly they accepted the Immaculate Conception and...
No. The Immaculate Conception is a very late Roman Catholic dogma. How could the Orthodox accept that when the dogmatization of that is far after the schism? It makes no sense. So the Orthodox Church says that she's the spotless virgin, but the word spotless virgin doesn't translate into Immaculate Conception.
And also that Orthodoxy has accepted filioque, and then for some reason they changed their mind.
No, it hasn't.
Okay, yeah, I was just making sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Palamite synods are all premised on rejecting that. So you could read the Palamite synods in the Norman Russell book, or you could read Saint Gregory Palamas's book, Apodictic Treatise on the Holy Spirit, which is published in English now. So those things will show you that no, we don't accept the filioque. Probably talking about Florence. So Roman Catholics try to argue that, oh, well, you had several bishops that accepted Florence. So what? Not all of them did. We don't have this oh, if you get 3 Orthodox bishops, then your whole thing folds. No, it's Mark of Ephesus did not accept it, and when they took the decree of union back, the rest of the church booed them and threw tomatoes at them and rejected it. So no, we did not accept Florence, and you could read the Ostromov book on the Council of Florence. Demetrios Jim.
Hello.
Yo, what's up?
My question is, what would be your thoughts? Would you consider to be heretical, or would Orthodoxy consider it to be heretical to take a preterist / postmillennial position, concerning the Book of Revelations? That is to say, we'd be saying these predictions happened in our past. We're living in the kingdom. Christ is coming.
No,
back.
I think partial preterism is what's taught by Athanasius, by St. Cyril. It's taught by John Chrysostom, clear as day, in his homilies on Luke 21 and Matthew 24.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't. But there might be elements of postmillennialism that some Orthodox might disagree with. I don't think that I don't see anything necessarily unorthodox in post-mill.
It's a pretty happy, optimistic position as far as, combining, futurist or all of those 4 categories versus the categories.
I used to, right. So I come out of the Reconstructionist Bonson Rushdoony sphere. I used to be into that, so I'm familiar.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be considered if I were to say, hey, we're living in the millennium now. Shit has happened. Shit is still happening. Christ is coming back. But, we're just, Jesus is putting everybody, at his footstool, so to speak. And,
well, another possibility is, we believe those things for sure. Another possibility is that Romans 11, that when the Jews convert, whenever that is, and Paul says that they will convert the rest of the world, it seems to be the terminology of Romans 11, that might be something that happens quick. So you could potentially have, whenever that is, something that's fast, that fulfills a lot of those, quote, post-millennial prophecies, such that it doesn't then require 10,000 years for the earth. But then again, you might have another 10,000 years. So I don't think there's any. I think that we would say these are theologumena.
Okay, and then another quick question is concerning the Council of Florence. Now, again, just to get your thoughts on this, there was as many bishops from the Eastern Church as there were at any other councils, for that matter. At the end of that council, obviously, they became union again on paper.
Right, but not all of them did. Saint Mark of Ephesus is a saint precisely because he didn't, and you can read the Ostromov book on the history of Florence.
Yeah,
right
definitely. But
we're not papists, right? So like, there's no like magical number of like, oh, well, if you get 5 bishops who are heretics, then we've won. That's the whole church, right? So Roman Catholics are always thinking in terms of like these, like gotcha numbers. Like, well, if I can get 3 or 4 patriarchs, if I can get this many number of bishops, like we don't do the numbers game. Like there's no numbers game that like proves or disproves the totality of the church. That's all Roman Catholic attitude.
No, yeah, I wasn't concerned with that mainly. I was concerned with, it was the ecumenical council. There was agreement. Things were signed.
It's not an ecumenical council.
Oh, so it's not going to, we don't, well, the Orthodox Church doesn't consider it an ecumenical council. But I'm saying
it's only an ecumenical council if you're a papist, correct?
But in the general layout of previous
ecumenical it's not councils, ecumenical because oikumene means accepted by the empire. So there, in both Roman Catholic and Orthodox theology, there's the idea of acceptance that eventually occurs. So for us, there's no like immediate magical thing that makes something, quote, an ecumenical council. That's why after the oikumene goes away, we have what's called pan-Orthodox synods that are accepted throughout the entire Orthodox world, like the Palamite synods.
So in order for a council to be legitimate, it requires more than just the acceptance of the bishops. And I mean,
yeah, because there have been robber synods, correct.
Okay. So the only thing I would so well, I guess that doesn't matter. I was going to say we're excommunications given post the Council of
yes,
Florence.
Absolutely. Yeah, all those people were considered traitors.
So they came back and they're like, "Yeah, we signed on paper," but then it's just what?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were called traitors and had tomatoes thrown at them.
But wouldn't it be heretical to say we're changing the outcome of this ecumenical council?
It's only an ecumenical council on papal prerogative, so you just keep assuming the papal perspective and saying, well, it's an ecumenical council, but why? What do you think makes something an ecumenical council?
Well, I'd be devil's advocate here. Obviously, I have a full disclosure. I am Orthodox, so you can tell by my Greek name probably. But I'm being devil's advocate and saying the patriarch signed it, multiple bishops signed it. At the end of the council, everyone signed it. It seemed good to the Holy Spirit. It's law. We go back.
Not all the patriarchs signed it. That's not true.
Well, not all, but as much as there's people that rejected ecumenical councils that were legitimate to the Eastern Orthodox Church.
Okay, so my point is that there's nothing about a council itself that magically makes it binding or authoritative, because there have been many false councils, as even Roman Catholics admit. So if we're going to go with the papal approach, we've got a whole host of other problems, namely, why isn't Lateran 649 an ecumenical council? It should be according to Roman Catholics, and yet no Roman Catholic council that has an ecumenical council.
Oh yeah, I definitely see the hypocrisy there, no doubt. But I'm wondering if there's so when Constantinople fell, officially we were union.
Correct. Right.
Okay. And people, and
Roman Catholics don't mention that, by the way, when they make their curse arguments.
Yeah, well, their curse is that they say that, yeah, we accepted it on paper, but we brought it back and we're heretical because we let the lay people say we don't want this, and they reversed the decisions of an ecumenical.
Yeah, but the Orthodox Church doesn't, it's not this clerical worship church where the laity doesn't have a role. The laity has a role. For example, the iconoclast controversy would have prevailed because the majority of the important bishoprics and sees were iconoclast, and the reason the iconoclast lost was because monastics and laity.
Yeah, the ones that bring up the union part of Constantinople. In other words, we were cursed because we were refused that ecumenical council, so to speak, according to Catholics. And it's interesting that the trad Catholics are like the most that don't accept Vatican II are we're like, wait a second, bro. Like, you're like more like.
Oh, well, yeah, but see, when you bring up curses about that kind of stuff, then it becomes proof that they're the true church because they're persecuted. So that's called moving the goalpost. Exactly. Joe Enders, what's up, man? You gotta unmute.
Yo, what's up, Jay?
Hey.
So I'm not going to argue with you because I honestly don't know the material well enough, but I want to start studying the material so at least I can get your perspective before I go and study the material. I hope that's okay with you.
Okay.
Yeah, so you brought up something specifically, and you bring this up a lot in your videos. You talk a lot about Vatican I. Now, what specifically is the hypocrisy that you were trying to point out in Vatican I that Catholics can't seem to answer?
Well, there's multiple ways that argument could be formulated depending upon whether we're talking about a Novus Ordo person that accepts Vatican II or a trad cat that doesn't like Vatican II.
Novus Ordo, obviously, just a regular Catholic argument.
Well, again, it depends on, like, I've talked about Vatican I a lot. So, I could be arguing that Vatican I contradicts the canons of the first 7 councils in the way that it approaches things. I could be arguing that a lot of Roman Catholics, for example, say I only have to believe the ex cathedra statements, which is not true. You have to believe much more than that, such as the Pope's universal ordinary teaching, as well as submitting to his ordinary teaching, which is even fallible. You still have to submit with docility. So I make a lot of arguments in that regard, so I could be talking about any of these things.
Well, yeah, no. So specifically, what I believe it was regarding the ex cathedra statements, which honestly, like as quote unquote Pope explainer, I probably agree with your reading of Vatican I. So that's what I was asking.
Okay, so at that point, I was probably arguing, where is the list of ex cathedra?
What was that?
Where is the list of ex cathedra statements?
Oh, I don't know.
There's not one.
That's your point, is that there isn't a list of ex cathedra statements. So
Sure.
because there isn't a list of ex cathedra statements,
Well, that's one point.
Okay.
Why wouldn't? I mean, I thought that the papacy's there to help us understand and know with certitude and all this. Why wouldn't they give us some list of these things if that's your sort of like Trump argument, kill shot against pretty much everybody else, Protestants, right?
I mean, like I said, I don't know. I'm looking into it. I'm going to look into the arguments right now. I don't really think that that's the strongest argument that you can.
Well, it's one argument, but I think it's really strong for for Roman Catholics that are struggling, because it's one thing to say, okay, I believe that the Pope, has this power to define dogmas in an extraordinary way, ex cathedra, etc. I follow and I'm bound to the ex cathedra teachings. But then as an individual Catholic, you're not in any better position because you don't have any clear way to adjudicate without going through this mountain of documents. My point is that you're not in a much better position than a Protestant, because instead of the Protestant trying to wade his way through interpreting the scriptures, you've got more work to do with mountains of papal documents and 3 broad criteria as to what counts as binding and authoritative. And you're not in any better position. So how do you know as an individual what dogmas you're supposed to follow when Roman Catholics are just sort of parroting this idea of, well, I follow the ex cathedra teachings? And you're not even given a list of that. You're given 3 broad criteria. Now it's upon you to dig through mountains of papal documents to figure out what that is. How are you in a better position than a Protestant?
Oh, that's your point. Okay, I see what you're getting at. Okay, yeah. I mean, when it comes to that, this is one of those things that if I were to, critique like the compendium of papal documents that we have, the compendium of ecumenical councils all throughout church history, one of the things that I think needs to be more clearly defined is the magisterium, and what the magisterium is, and how the magisterium operates, and how Catholic laity is supposed to interact with the magisterium. And I don't think that we need to be going through every single papal document. I obviously believe that, the politics of Rome, the political establishment of the Catholic Church.
But wait a minute, though. Wait a minute. I'm not talking about papal private opinions of politics. I'm talking about...
I'm not talking about it either. That's not what I'm talking about either.
No, you're misunderstanding.
Even the teachings themselves themselves, even the things coming out directly from the church, they have a very, very narrow effect on the lives of everyday Catholics.
None of that is relevant to the point that I'm making, which is that you're bound to follow not just ex cathedra, but also the Pope's universal ordinary magisterial teaching and his ordinary teaching. That means in this mountain of papal documents, all of those are binding on you. That's the point.
They're binding on you, and if you know them, if you know what
They're binding on you whether you know them or not. They're binding on you whether you know them or not.
I mean, sure, to a certain capacity, but there's obviously like reduced culpability when somebody does something.
What does that have to do? What does that have to do with how are you in a better position than a Protestant with this massive amount of documents to know what your actual church's teachings are?
Well, that's what I said. You need a clear definition of the magisterium and the
so 2,000 years of the Roman Catholic Church hasn't figured out how to define magisterium yet?
As far as I can understand, there's some pointing to it in Vatican I, which is kind of what I was asking you about. And then
and my point is that Vatican I gives you 3 criteria of what you're bound to follow. That does you no good into actually adjudicating what goes into what bin as an individual Roman Catholic reading through the mountains of documents.
I'm not talking about reading through the mountains of documents, though. That's not the point that I'm making. What I'm asking you about is, like, if I were to think as a Catholic, like I said, again, this is simple. If there is this, if there is this compendium of things that you need to follow regarding ordinary magisterium, ex cathedra statements, all these things that, are binding on you, that are all these things, does Vatican I explicitly state that? If it does, obviously it needs to be defined more clearly in maybe a future church council or anything along those lines. That much I can agree with you with. That's what I'm asking about.
Yeah, it gives you 3 broad criteria, and it doesn't tell you what amongst the massive amount of documents that you're bound to in those documents is in which bin. It's a very simple argument that I'm presenting to you. So the fact that you're saying, I don't care about all those other documents, that's my argument. My argument is that you have to care about all those other documents because you're bound to those documents. And the 3 broad criteria do not give you any better epistemic position than a Protestant reading the Bible.
Okay, so
the papacy doesn't do what it's supposed to do.
You're misunderstanding what I meant by I don't care. I mean, I don't care in regards to this very narrow, specific thing. Not that it doesn't matter on, an epistemic level.
Okay, well, but you're not addressing the challenge that I'm presenting, which is that you're in a position.
I told you I'm not going to because I don't know the answers. I'm literally trying to get information from you so I can look it up and understand it better myself.
Okay, well, Vatican I's not long. It's a short council. You can read it printed out. It's about 15 pages if you print it out.
Right, but I need to know what your objections to it specifically are. That's my point.
Sure, and I mean, again, I've done
papal infallibility is one of the things that you bring up quite often, and I'm guessing it's regarding what you're saying about the ex cathedra statements and the magisterial teachings.
I think this is a very strong argument, given the fact that Roman Catholics are always saying that we have the trump card, which is the office of the Pope, which allows us to give certitude, to settle disputes, to know what the dogmas are, to be certain of our faith. These are constant pop Catholic arguments that we hear all the time. My point is that what Vatican I tells you is 3 broad criteria and doesn't actually tell you what to put into those bins. And so if Roman Catholicism was actually going to do the work that it claims to do, we should at least have a list of the ex cathedra dogmas. You don't have that. So this is a ridiculous, bureaucratic, stupid system. That's my argument.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's fine. I just, like I said, I don't think that's a very strong argument.
Okay, and why is it not a strong? Why is that not a strong argument?
Because you're saying that the system is entirely ineffective because there's something that could be potentially added to it in another ecumenical council in the future that actually makes it a little
that's not the argument. The argument is that it has not provided the very thing that it claims to have provided for 2,000 years. That's the argument, not whether there can be a future clarification.
So what you're specifically saying then, and I want to make sure I'm understanding you. What, you get aggravated? I'm asking for understanding.
Because you're being obtuse. It's a very clear, specific, obvious argument.
No, I'm not. I'm not being obtuse. I'm actually being honest and asking you genuine questions. If you want to assume that, you're welcome to.
Okay, well, how many more ways do I have to do? So look, the argument is this, that the Roman Catholic apologists all the time constantly argue that we have the trump card as a Roman Catholic because we can give certitude, clarity, unity, provide pastoral universal guidance through the office of the Pope as supreme teacher. He's indefectible, he's infallible, etc. That's the claim, that's the argument, that's the car salesmanship that goes on. And what I'm saying is that when we actually try to look at the doctrines and what I'm bound to follow, when we raise a very basic question as to, okay, what are the ex cathedra dogmas that I'm bound to? There's no list of the ex cathedra dogmas. Every different Roman Catholic will get. That's a very strong argument if it in fact doesn't do this.
It's a strong argument against the apologists who are making an incomplete argument. That's all I'm hearing from
They're echoing what Vatican I says. That's the point. They're not wrong in their argument.
They're saying, that's what I'm asking you. So what you're saying about Vatican I is that Vatican I makes a claim that they can't back up.
Yeah. Have you read Pastor Eternus? Have you read Leo Sadis Cognitum?
No, I'm going to. That's what I'm telling you. I'm going into this discussion, and I wanted to get your perspective. That's why I said I'm not trying.
Right. And so when you read those doctrines, those dogmas, you'll see that they're saying what I say. This is the way you know the true faith.
I'm asking for an example. Is my point from if that you might know off the top of your head from the documents that you're specifically.
Yeah, it's called Pastor Eternus. It makes this very argument.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look into it a little bit more, but it seems to me like you're refuting Catholic apologists and
Catholic apologists. This is sophistry. It's sophistry. No, it's sophistry. It is sophistry.
If you cut me off halfway through my argument, you can make it's an argument that it's sophistry. But if you don't let me finish it, then you're never going to get to the point at which I actually get direct and explicit.
No, because it's not a question of whether it's only a thing that the apologists say. Okay, I was using them as an example. The apologists are making their argument from what Vatican I very clearly teaches. It's called Pastor Eternus. So rather than getting all sassy, you need to go read your basic documents.
This goes back to what I said. Okay, you know what?
Okay, you got sassy in the debate. So then you came here claiming you weren't going to debate.
You interrupted me halfway through my argument.
Because it was a bad argument. Because it was a bad argument.
It wasn't a complete argument. It wasn't a conclusion. What are you refuting from my argument?
It's irrelevant. It's not a question of what the apologists as authorities are saying. They're basing it on Vatican I.
I'm asking you what part of Vatican I?
It's called Pastor Eternus. It's called Pastor Eternus. Oh my gosh.
What from Pastor Eternus?
It's not, okay, this is ridiculous. He doesn't even know his own documents, and then he's playing like he's this victim, and I'm cutting him off. This is what we get with these people. Unbelievable. Connor. I don't know Vatican I, but I'm going to come argue it, even though I'm saying I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing. Don't cut me off. They always play these games. I'm so sick of these people's games. Connor? Go ahead. We can't hear you, man. No sound from you, bro. Bradley. Somebody said I can tell he was Catholic by the way he's arguing the pitch of his voice. It's always the same manifestations. Go ahead.
Hi, Jay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, your last two guests were very interesting. Just a little bit of background. I was an RCIA teacher. If you don't know what that, you know what that is, don't you? RCIA.
I do. Yep.
For several years, and one of the things that drew me away from the Roman Catholic Church was I simply could not answer the questions of non-Catholics who were thinking of joining the church. I realized I hadn't really thought about some of the promulgations coming down from the Vatican, especially the Immaculate Conception of the 1800s,
Mm-hmm.
and then after 1900 years, the Assumption. And the rationale was always this has always been a part of the belief of the ancient church. Well, if that's the case, then why doesn't the Orthodox Church accept the Immaculate Conception? I mean, how far do you want to go back? St. Anne, her parents? It didn't make any sense to me. And I realized, even though I had passed that question in high school on a religion exam, I didn't really believe it myself. So I couldn't really, in good conscience, continue teaching RCIA, something I didn't believe myself. And then there were other issues that contributed to my leaving the Roman Catholic Church. But that's one issue. I have another issue that I'd like to, I don't know if this is appropriate for this or not, and if it isn't, let me know. After I left the Roman Catholic Church, I attended an Antiochian Orthodox church for about a year. Mm-hmm. And I met a very nice couple, man and wife and his son. And they joined on Pascha. I didn't join. I really wanted to, but something was kind of holding me back because I'm really kind of more drawn to ROCOR. In any case, after about a year, they joined, and after a year, they had to move several hundred miles away, and they didn't have a local Antiochian church to go to. And from my understanding, what the man told me was his previous pastor, had to undergo a sort of a negotiation with a Greek Orthodox church to transfer his membership there. And I know that there's a population problem and, overlapping dioceses and in this country, but Orthodox Americans are somewhat at a disadvantage because if you're Roman Catholic in this country, all you need is a letter of transfer from one church to another. It's a pretty simple process, but where you have to cross jurisdictions and get permission, to join, I can see that I wonder how many Americans have that problem.
I mean, a laity can go to whatever Orthodox church they want. They don't have to do letters of transfer. So, anyway,
are they allowed to receive communion, or do they have to? Is there like I know?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm going to move on. We're talking about kind of Roman Catholic Protestant stuff, not Orthodox jurisdictional issues. But yeah, I mean, unless you're under some canonical impediment, you can. Drago, got another Roman Catholic. You have to unmute.
Is it on me? Sorry, because the stuff cut off, or someone else speaking?
You're up.
Oh, thanks, Jay. Yeah, so I used to be a Protestant, K through 12 school. Then it became a Catholic. I went to the University of Notre Dame, been Catholic for about 8 years. But I am, I'm going to start looking, just get up to speed on the different church history positions, Orthodox, Catholic, etc. But I know we're focused more on the Protestant stuff. I guess my question is, I know for the Catholic perspective, there's the idea of development. Whereas, people who criticize Catholicism would say, you're kind of adding stuff that wasn't there before. I know someone mentioned the Immaculate Conception. And
well, but also, I mean, Pastor Eternus and Satis Cognitum, they don't speak as if it's a development. They speak as if it was always the case. So I think that you're kind of put in a mutually exclusive choice position if you're Roman Catholic as to whether you want to accept development of doctrine or whether you want to accept that it was always there.
Yeah, it seems, I guess the frustration for me is that a lot of these claims from both sides just seem fundamentally unfalsifiable, where you just have to choose your axiom and your presupposition, and that dictates then the rest of how you look at history. Is that a fair thing, or do you think that you can definitively have the correct epistemology without resorting to just an arbitrary selection of an axiom?
No, I think that if Roman Catholicism contradicts at a dogmatic level, that's all you need. That invalidates the system.
And would you say, for example, let's say transubstantiation, right? The formalized presentation, like that language wasn't used. It wasn't written like that in the early church. But how can we know whether, from argument from silence, whether it's a clarification on something that was previously intuited, so you kind of intuitively knew it, and then you just created language to describe the intuition behind the concept, versus just creating a novel concept entirely that wasn't even grasped intuitively? Like, is there reliable?
Okay, well, I don't. So I think
Yeah.
that's a different topic in terms of explicating and clarifying what was already believed. We don't believe that doctrine develops. We don't believe that there's something that the faith has at the seventh council with icons that's new and wasn't the case in the apostles, right? So a lot of times, for example, Eric Ibarra will say, well, look at the icons they developed. They didn't have those in the first century. And yet when you read the Seventh Ecumenical Council, it says it's not a development, it's an apostolic tradition. So he goes against the very thing the council says. So that's different. So we have a different approach. We don't think that there's some deficiency to the patristic period that's complete. Calling crusades against Muslims versus going and praying in mosques towards Mecca. Okay, that's a straight up contradiction. How is it not? Saying at Chalcedon that clerics cannot be members of the state, and then you have the papacy saying that you have to believe that the papacy is a state with universal world geopolitical power to be saved. I mean, to me, those are just contradictions.
Yeah, I'd have to look into those. On the former one, though, we talk about crusades on Muslims versus praying in a mosque. Is that just kind of like some kind of official doctrinal thing, or just more of a pastoral discretionary, maybe bad
No,
judgment?
see, again, you can't, like the councils teach that clerics cannot go to synagogues, mosques, or the gatherings of heretics and schismatics to participate in liturgical services. So to go into a mosque as the Pope and to pray with the Muslims towards Mecca is an action of apostasy in traditional moral theology of the Roman Catholic Church.
I see. Yeah, I got to look at that event. So thanks for mentioning that. And if I could just ask one question.
Sure.
One Protestant brought to mind this quote of Augustine in his Retractions, where Augustine talks about the rock, rock of the church, and Augustine says, sometimes I say it's Peter, sometimes I talk Christ, confession, but let the reader decide which interpretation. And for me, I'm kind of scratching my head, like, why is Augustine saying let the reader decide, as if it's like some arbitrary?
Well, I mean, more than that, if you read Denny's book, Papalism, you'll find that the majority of the church fathers do not exposit that in that way. There was a lot of dissension, a lot of dispute about the rock and about Matthew 16. And so that to me says, well, wait a minute, if there's a lot of dispute and dissension, then it's not. So 44 of the church fathers believe that it's the faith. 17 of them say it's Peter. So much for what was believed everywhere at all times by all.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. What for the Orthodox? What does it mean? What does the whole primacy of Peter mean? First among equals. Like in practice, what does that necessarily mean? Is there any added layer of authority, or is it there no additional authority? Like, what does it mean to be first? I still don't quite understand that one.
Well, I mean, in the ecumenical councils, in the Orthodox view, certain privileges are accorded to metropolitan sees, and typically in the history of like the canons of Sardic or something like that, you can appeal for a retrial. So if you wanted an answer to that from a Roman Catholic perspective, you could read the Alexandria document right here, which actually is a Roman Catholic approved document that basically admits what we would say. It's basically admitting most of our arguments. There's a couple places where I think it still tries to salvage the Roman Catholic papal position, but for the most part, if this document is correct, the Vatican I's not true. So, I mean, if you look at, for example, the way a metropolitan has privileges within his jurisdiction, like the Moscow Patriarchate, he has privileges about all the bishops in his domain. In terms of the synod, he has privileges about priests that are ordained. He signs off on them. So different patriarchates can have privileges within their synod. However, those privileges don't really extend outside of that jurisdiction, and that's why the Alexandria document and the Chieti document admit that Rome did not exercise jurisdiction outside of Rome. So whatever privileges it has, signing the documents first at the ecumenical councils, flowery language, whatever, none of that is, Vatican I's super bishop.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you, Jay, for having me on and for hosting these spaces.
Absolutely. Yeah, great questions. I appreciate your attitude. That was very civil. Connor, do you want to try again? Because we couldn't hear you a minute ago.
Hey, Jay. Appreciate you giving me a second chance there.
Yes, sir. Sure.
So I hope this isn't getting off topic, and I'll leave the ground if it is. But I did hear you addressing about preterism and some eschatology questions there. And I've been having some discussions with some Orthodox. I'm Protestant. And I have encountered this concept of the great apostasy. And it's playing. I have some questions about what Orthodoxy believes about this. Is this the standard teaching? And it also seems to me that there might be some issues with the debate about the West versus the East, as the question is, I guess, the West kind of looks at the future as we are progressing. There was a progression in Christianity is looking towards a future that is going to be different than the past or the present. And maybe Orthodoxy doesn't see things this way.
If you mean like, do we see truth as something static and unchanging? Yes. Mm-hmm. So the faith that's once for all delivered to the saints, as Jude says in Jude 3, that's sufficient, right? So there's nothing that occurs in the 7th century that makes up for deficiencies in the 1st or 2nd century. So a lot of Roman Catholics have this attitude of like, well, that was the early, infant church, and it hadn't developed into the flowery medieval, worldly kingdom of the papacy yet. We would say no. There's nothing deficient in the 1st century that the 7th century adds.
Sure, and so preterism. You seem to buy into that view. Is that a general Orthodox view?
Yeah, I would say most of the Eastern Church Fathers that comment on those passages have a typical partial preterist attitude. Athanasius, Cyril, St. John Chrysostom.
Okay, and the great apostasy, is this a concept in Orthodoxy, or what is that even?
Yeah, I would say when it's discussed, you have a lot of elders, saints, and church fathers that talk about a final day's apostasy based on the Thessalonians text, yes. There's an Orthodox book that's well known called Apostasy and Antichrist that's put out by Jordanville Monastery.
Jordanville Monastery. Look into that. Okay, but so truth doesn't change, but then Christianity is progressing to, there's some vision of the future in the Orthodox concept.
Well, I mean, right? Again, you're using kind of terms that are not like, I don't know what you mean by progressing. I mean, we would say that, the gospel being spread is progression, but progressing like into progressivism or Newman's doctrinal development, no, we don't believe those things.
No, I totally understand that, but I guess, and I'm using language because I don't really have the theological language.
That's fine. That's okay.
I have very conservative beliefs, so I'm not talking about liberalism per se, but I do find this frame. It seems like with a lot of Orthodox, where they just find everything. Like the whole rational mind in the West is corrupted because we're trying to create a society or a world that is better than the one we have now. And it seems to me that in the Christian frame, this is essentially what we are doing. Yes. So maybe we're not discovering more truth, but we do have to. We do have to discover more truth. The truth is not changing, but we're discovering it. No.
Well, there's created truths and truths about the world and nature. Those can be new discoveries, but we're not making new theological discoveries. There's no new dogmas or something like this. So, again, I guess I'm just not sure what you're getting at with that.
No, it's probably off topic for the space, but I'm going to look that up. So, the Great Apostasy book. Can you give me the title one more time?
It's called Apostasy and Antichrist, Jordanville Monastery.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, good questions. Concresador. I'm getting a little tired, so I'm going to have to wrap it up pretty soon. We've been going for a long time today. You gotta unmute.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, Jay, thanks for having me. I gotta admit, a lot of smart speakers in here. I'm kind of retarded when it comes to that. Just a lowly new Protestant here. My biggest question for you is, what do you think Protestantism is getting right in America today, and what do you think it's getting wrong? Thank you.
Well, I wouldn't say that Protestantism as a whole collective movement is like doing things right, because it kind of assumes that it's like this singular front. I think that the best way I could frame that is there's a lot of sincere individual Protestants who are doing good things and who mean well and are sincere. But I don't think that there's any like collective bodies of Protestantism that I would get behind or say that it's really that they're really doing good things. So, good question. What are they doing wrong? I think the Protestantism just kind of started as a reaction to legitimate corruption in the Roman Church, and unfortunately, it kind of threw out a lot of the baby with the bathwater. So. As a historical movement, I think it's pretty much been a pretty big failure. But that's not to speak to individual Protestants who I think many of whom are good and are sincere and are doing good things. Michael? You gotta unmute, man. Gimothy Torton, $1. Tim says that he's not a theologian when you ask him questions, and he constantly makes videos on theology. Yeah, I mean, I think Tim likes to just stay in the wheelhouse of philosophy and culture war. So that's probably what he feels like is his wheelhouse. Harry Serpanos, $10. Jay, thank you for good works in exposing falsehoods. Thank you, Harry. Appreciate that. Longtime super chatter. Now, we lost our dude. Michael, you're still there. Do you want to unmute? You're up, man, if you want to unmute and talk. All right. Moving on. Scolion history. You gotta unmute.
Oh, sorry about that. Jay, can you hear me?
What's up, man?
Hey, man. First off, Christos Anesti, Christ is risen.
Indeed, he is.
Okay, so yeah. Funny enough, I actually, I think I know that one Angry Joe guy, that Catholic guy. I'm pretty sure he's my buddy's co-worker, works for a Catholic studio. And I just wanted to, I'm not here to debate. I'm Orthodox, but really quick, I just wanted to say that, like, you know, I think the problem is with a lot of Catholics is when debating, they're looking into really technical issues and they're getting so detailed, they kind of miss the forest for the trees. You know, and they see it as like
I don't think tonight's Catholics were detailed, so
no, but you know what I mean. Like basically, I think they get stuck on but they get stuck on these little points, right? And then you kind of lose your way, or at least that's what I find when I'm debating my Catholic buddies. But I think the funny thing is, it's like if you look back, I think the right way to go is like with the Pope, as you say, you know, it's not a technical thing, but they look at it as a technicality. I talked to a Catholic buddy and I said, is it supposed to work? Is the Pope supposed to bring clarification? And he said, technically it's supposed to work. And to me, the question is like, does God work in technicalities or does he work in reality? You know,
well, no, I mean, I think they end up with this sort of Talmudic type attitude ultimately, where no, God works on technicalities and he tallies up your days that you owe and temporal punishment, purgatory, and if you don't pay off every day, I mean, it's ridiculous. So I'm not trying to be mean, but I do want to get through some more of these. Giacomo Undici. So we got another Catholic. Go ahead. Got to unmute. Did you not turn your mic on, bro? Giacomo Undici. We can't hear you, man. Come out and come back in. Turn on your mic. All right, let's try again.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
How's it going? Can you hear me?
Yeah, man.
Hi, so I've been listening to a few of these people, and I've actually watched a few of your debates. I think I watched, you debated some big, Eric, I think his name was, and then I watched this other guy, Luigi, debate some other guy.
Uh-huh.
So I've watched a few of these debates,
Uh-huh.
and I've seen the Orthodox, they seem to, in these debates, they seem to appeal to Vatican I, and they go, Vatican I is why Roman Catholicism is false. And I guess my question is, I don't know if I'm able to, if I'm suited to debate this, but I guess my question is, wouldn't it just make more sense to debate from the schism, from that and before, and see okay, which system was true at that point, because that's when they broke off, and then you see which church was true beforehand. Do you see what I'm saying? Why don't you debate?
No, this is an argument I make all the time. I've done countless live streams where I argue that the church of the first 1,000 years is the way that we would determine who the ancient church is.
So but I'm saying a lot of what I've been hearing today is just you talk about Vatican I.
Well, that's just what came up tonight, but I've made
Okay,
countless hours of videos arguing from the first 1,000 years of the church.
Okay, yeah, that was probably my main question. I have another small question.
Okay.
So I saw this on Twitter. There was this deaconess in the Orthodox Church who I don't know exactly what it was, but she was a deaconess and she was handing out the Eucharist. How in the Orthodox system can that be stopped? Something like that be not?
Right, well, it's stopped because it's rejected by most of the Orthodox world. So it's a very small minority who really wants to push these things.
So how does that situation get handled? Is it within the local church and the local?
Yeah, if it continues, then eventually they get basically rejected by the rest of the Orthodox Church, and synods would consider them condemned and so forth. So. There are more Roman Catholics, so we get a lot of Orthodox questions. So I'm getting pretty tired. Modern apostate. It's a Catholic. My mind's turning to mush because we did a live stream before this.
Hey, good evening, Jay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny to hear people talk about it, problems in the Orthodox Church when, I live in Chicago and, a priest is blessing a gay union, and then, I saw a video recently where there's this woman, she's offering mass, and it's just kind of ridiculous. And I'm Catholic, but I'm considering converting, because it's just all the arguments seem to be very convincing. One thing I wanted to ask was if I'm considering converting, how do I go about living the liturgical life? So, for example, if I'm Catholic and I've committed sins, should I continue going to confession in the Catholic Church, or should I wait until I'm accepted into the Orthodox Church?
Yeah, I mean, I would, I would say, I wouldn't. I mean, you're gonna do probably what your conscience dictates to you. So I can't tell you what your conscience is and it shouldn't be. But if I were in that situation, I wouldn't continue the Roman Catholic stuff, because I think you're uniting yourself spiritually. Not trying to be rude, but I mean, we see communion as something important, and who you're in communion with matters. And I would not want to be in communion with Francis, so because there's a spiritual thing going on there. Centurion. You gotta unmute.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Uh-huh.
Good evening, Jay. Thanks so much for having me on. So I'm coming from a Protestant background. I was raised as a Lutheran, and then I kind of apostatized, went through, whole atheist phase, all that stuff. And coming back into it now, I am very interested in Orthodoxy, leaning towards it. Absolutely wonderful. Sort of a question for you coming from almost a Roman Catholic perspective, because one of my Catholic friends was trying to convince me not to go Orthodox. And one thing he mentioned was that there's an Orthodox tradition of denying women communion if they are on their menstrual cycle. And from a Protestant background, denying communion to someone just seemed kind of wrong to me.
Yeah, this is just a thing that pops up in certain Russian areas for whatever. It's kind of a Russian superstition that pops up sometimes. It's not the norm. And it has to do with just sort of like people reading Old Testament texts and then sort of getting concerned with this. But it's not usually the case. I've only heard it discussed as a thing that happens sometimes. But I don't think that it doesn't make sense in terms of the liberty that we have in the New Covenant. I wouldn't think. But you do sometimes get these, like the old believers, for example, they develop some kind of weird superstitions at times. So I'm not knocking everybody that attends an old rite or whatever. I'm just saying that sometimes you can get these sort of superstitious ideas that develop. Chris, what's up? So it looks like Chris can't connect. Donald wants to come on. Okay. Donald Trump's here finally. Unbelievable. We have a great guy. Donald Trump. He's here. He's going to be great. Gotta unmute. Gonna have to unmute. I gotta tell you. If you're gonna unmute.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hey, Jay, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay, sorry, Jay. Hey, Jay Dyer. I've been a huge fan since early 2018, 2019. Part of my preachings is that that you won the culture wars. You beat JF at Bloodsports. Okay, back in the day.
Okay.
Anyway, I've been exclusively JD. What the frack before that, and ever since Jay Dyer all the way.
Okay.
I'm a Protestant, born a Catholic, went through the ropes, the early stuff. I'm sorry to ask, but I just wanted to know, as it was brought up today, what is the rapture? Like, is it a thing? Like, what does the Bible say about the end times? What does it really look like? Even though, like, I've gone through, like, the Bible 20 times, I really don't concentrate on the end times. I've also have seen you, have you seen Tares Amongst the Wheat, sequel to Lamp in the Dark, which goes into the beginnings of the Protestant and Catholic crusade against them? Won't take up any more of your time. Good sir. Love you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, I have not seen the documentary or movie that you're talking about. The rapture is there is a bodily assumption resurrection event that occurs in the book of Thessalonians, but we would say Paul's just talking about the last days, the final, the general resurrection of all men, and then the eternal state. So there's no pre-tribulation rapture. This is a Plymouth Brethren Protestant created doctrine John Nelson Darby and C.I. Scofield and the whole idea of dispensationalism made up this idea. It has nothing really to do with anything in terms of historic Christianity. And yeah, so Fawn, $10. I visited the Pentecostal church. Is the same atmosphere as a temple. In Pentecostal church, God inhabits them. They scream and shake. They gibber. This was on a Hindu telegram. Yeah, okay, so he's quoting a person on a Hindu telegram saying that the Pentecostal church is just like demonic manifestations of Hindus. Yes, Father Surfing Rose was correct. Low Pan, $10. This is off topic, but there's a fourth book by Quigley called Weapon Systems and Political Stability. Yeah, I don't have that one. I bought his Evolution of Civilizations book, but I don't have the one that you're talking about. It's a sequel to Tragedy and Hope. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I mean, Anglo-American Establishment's kind of a sequel, but it's a book that was written the last 12 years of his life. I'll have to get that. Thank you, Lopan. Caleb, $3. I'm going to read these quick because my mind is turning to mush. Protestant friend said Orthodoxy is contradictory because he says unbaptized infants, because we say unbaptized infants don't go to hell. Confession de Citis does not say they go to hell. He says it's a contradiction. It's not a contradiction. Stelios, $10. What would be the response to a Catholic who says that Saint Justinian is a heretic? Well, the Orthodox Church accepts, read the Kenneth Vesha book, Saint Justinian, Christology of Saint Justinian, Kenneth Vesha, W-E-S-C-H-E. I've never heard that he reposed as an Athartodocetist. I've not heard that. Taghua, $5. In answer to a fellow who was thinking about confession, when I was an Orthodox catechumen, my priest wanted me to confess periodically in a practiced non-sacramental way. But he's talking about confessing to his Catholic priest. So you can't confess in a non-sacramental way. Or did you mean as a catechumen to him? Maybe that's what you meant. I think that's what you meant. Sincere Hypocrite, $3.32. Is it coherent for Orthodox to reject the liberal paradigm while thinking that free market is the best economic system? You can go back and watch my old podcast, the critiquing libertarian economics. Any last Roman Catholics? I'm not taking anything except raise your hand if you're Roman Catholic. All right, no more. I can't take any more. My mind is mush. Thank you guys. Appreciate that. Be sure and head over to chalk.com. Use promo code J44Life. Go get tickets to our live event June 22nd in Vegas. Thank you guys.